Chapter 706. Yu Shu passed the first assessment and returned to the Kunling Bureau. Except for Jing Qin, there was already a group of subordinates waiting to congratulate her. They had heard about the twists and turns of today's assessment from Xiaolan, who came back first. They knew that the new Taiching department Shaoqing deliberately made things difficult for Yu Shu. They were full of righteous indignation and said that Shui Yun's dismissal was great. Yu Shu smiled modestly. In fact, she was worried about Shui Rui. She didn't know where the people she sent to chase him were now. Not long after, the Grand Secretary sent someone to send a box. It turned out to be the 2 crystal bracelets that Shui Yun left in Taishi Tower. It was received together with the message from the Grand Secretary. The Grand Secretary said that this thing is for you to deal with. Whether you want to return it to Miss Shui Yun or refund the money to her, it's up to you. Yu Shu smiled. When the person left, she took out a white crystal bracelet and left a topaz bracelet in the box. She called Xiaolan in and handed it to him. I didn't expect Lord Xie to be a sentimental person. Today, thanks to you for speaking up for me. This is a little gratitude. Please don't refuse it. When Xiaolan saw what was in the box, he was immediately flattered. He shook his head in surprise and said, Lord, you can't. This thing is too valuable. I don't deserve it. Besides, I was just telling the truth today. I didn't help you. According to the sky-high price of 7,000 taels of silver for Shui Yun, this one was 3,500 taels of silver. Xiaolan couldn't afford it even if he lost 10 years of salary. Although he knew it was a good thing, he was embarrassed to accept it. Yu Shu didn't care about him. She forced it into his hand and sent him out. She put down the curtain and turned around to give the other bracelet to Wen Xiao, and didn't give in to her. He just said worriedly, didn't the person just say that the Grand Secretary asked you to return it or refund the money? You gave it to us. Are you going to return thousands of taels of silver to them? Yu Shu sat down on a chair and leisurely held a cup of tea to moisten her throat. Hearing that, she snorted and said, I can say that you are a straightforward person with few thoughts. Since you have given the great suggestion to me, you will not care how I deal with it. She could only blame Shui Yun for having bad intentions. She had spent 10 times the price to buy these 2 strings of crystals just for today. She was heartless and unjust. She was stupid to return the money to her. After all, Wen Xiaoan had been with Yu Shu for a long time. He knew that she would occasionally be stubborn, so he didn't say anything unpleasant. He sighed and said, that Shui Yun really shot herself in the foot. She tried every possible way to ruin your future, but in the end, she made herself lose face. Yu Shu looked up at him and asked, tell me, why did she fail to scheme against me and instead suffered a great loss? Wen Xiaoan had discussed it with a group of people in the Kunling Bureau before. At this time he took it for granted and said, as the saying goes, a straight body is not afraid of a crooked shadow. You have not done anything against your conscience, so you are naturally not afraid of her slandering you. Yu Shu shook her head and wanted to teach him a lesson. You're only right. I didn't do anything against my conscience, so I'm confident. But if I wasn't prepared at all, I might have been the one to suffer losses today because of her scheming against me. Wen Xiaoan looked curious. He moved a step in front of her and looked like he was obediently listening to her. Since Yu Shu had accepted this little brother, she felt that it was her responsibility to enlighten him. So she became patient and lowered her voice to tell him, Shui Yun and I have an old grudge. You saw that as soon as she came to the Celestial Commissioner, she couldn't wait to find trouble with me. I guess that she was up to no good. I heard from the right commander that she asked for this position. You said that she was a cultivator who didn't belong to the secular world. She sought power for no reason. There was no doubt that she wanted to go against me. I was on guard against her at that time. I guess that she was staring at me every day. She probably wanted to do something bad in my evaluation. One should not have the intention to harm others, but one should always be on guard against others. People who had no grievances with you might have evil thoughts for the sake of benefits, let alone people who had a grudge against you. In life, you should either live with your tail between your legs and never make things difficult for others, or you should press forward and kill those who stand in your way. She wanted to harm me. I couldn't just be on guard against her. I had to make sure that she would never return. Then I had to be ahead of her and uproot her. Do you still remember that on the first day she came to the Kunling Bureau, I beat 2 gatekeepers? I took advantage of the disgust of the Celestial Commissioner towards her. I didn't have to worry that no one would oppose her taking an important position. I could take advantage of it. As the saying goes, know yourself and know your enemy. Only then can you win 100 battles. Shui Yun was arrogant. She thought that she was the direct disciple of Mount Longhu and looked down on outsiders like us. I wanted to use this as a dagger to catch her unprepared. I had the 6 trigrams divination. I predicted in advance who would participate in this evaluation. The adjutant of the Astronomy Bureau, Chui Xiui, owed me a lot of money. I lured him with benefits but didn't make things difficult for him. I asked him to use his strength at the last moment to force her to show her true colors. In the end, there was no suspense. Shui Yun lost the first opportunity. She tried to fight against many people alone. She only cared about the front and not the back. I was on guard against her, but she didn't guard against me. Tell me, how could she fight against me? Yushu talked eloquently. When Xiao and only understood half of it. Although he didn't feel enlightened, he did benefit from it. Xiao, and you want to return to your hometown in glory and fight for your mother. I can help you, but you need to have the ability to climb up. It's not enough to just have the intention. You have to know what you are doing. Don't waste your time. I hope I didn't choose the wrong person. After pouring another cup of tea to quench her thirst, Yushu stood up and straightened her cuffs. She said to Wen Xiaoan, who was in a daze, I have passed the evaluation. According to the rules, I can rest today. If there is anything urgent in the bureau, you can stay here. I'm leaving. Wen Xiaoan was a good person. He learned to endure humiliation. He had perseverance and willpower. He was also obedient enough. Yushu observed him for a period of time and found that in the long run, he would only become a pawn who followed the orders of his superiors. In the final analysis, he lacked his own ideas. How could a person who had no backbone and only listened to what others said without thinking? Yushu opened the curtain and went out. She put Wen Xiaoan's matter behind her and left the Celestial Commissioner quickly. She got on the sedan chair and went to the princess mansion. Don't get me wrong. She didn't go to give money to Shui Yun. She went to talk to Jing Qin. Yesterday Jing Qin came suddenly. She was not prepared at all. She hurriedly sent him away. After one night, she felt that something was wrong. The portrait had been handed over to the palace. She had no clue what the emperor's plan was. As a last resort, she could only persuade Jing Qin to go to the palace to inquire about the news. Otherwise she would be in the dark. When the supervisor of the Shui mansion was recognized and the whole Shui family was implicated, she only heard the news. By then it would be too late. As for whether the Shui family really wanted to rebel, she had to wait until Shui Rui came back to make a long-term plan. Chapter 707. The guards of the princess's residence all recognized Yushu's face. Jing Qin had told them that if she came to find him, they didn't need to send a message and could directly invite her in. Lord Yu, please wait a moment. I will invite our young master to come over. The steward of the front yard was a tall and thin eunuch surnamed Ning. After eunuch Ning settled Yushu down, he left in a hurry. Jing Qin was the only master of the large princess's residence. As long as he returned to the residence, there would be a group of servants paying attention to him no matter where he was. Eunuch Ning casually asked a guard at the second gate and found out that Jing Qin was not in Sushi Pavilion at the moment, but with Great Aunt Shui Yun. Eunuch Ning searched all the way. Just as he walked to the door of the courtyard, he heard a burst of intermittent sobbing coming from inside. The sobbing sounded very sad. It seemed to be Aunt Shui Yun. Otherwise, what other woman would make a ruckus in the princess residence? Eunuch Ning hesitated for a moment and looked around the courtyard. There was no one in the courtyard, so he didn't dare to rush in. Shui Yun, don't be willful. Drink the medicine and rest. Tomorrow I will report to the emperor and find someone to escort you back to Mount Longhu. Jing Qin came back not long ago. As soon as he entered the door, he heard the servant report that Shui Yun was angry and threw things all over the house. He was afraid that she would hurt her muscles and bones again, so he had to go and comfort her. Who knew that he would know that she hadn't taken medicine for half a month without him knowing? The medicine and ointment that he asked people to prepare were all secretly thrown away by her. I don't want to drink, Wu. I don't want you to care about me. Take the medicine away, take it away. After Shui Yun came back, she only asked the servant to wipe her face. She didn't even want to change her clothes. There were bald tea stains on her neckline. Her hair was disheveled and her eyelids were red and swollen. Tears were dripping down her eyes. She didn't look like her usual refreshing appearance. People couldn't bear to see her like this. Jing Qin frowned and handed the bowl of medicine to the servant. He reached out to hold her wheelchair to prevent her from moving. He tried to ease his tone and asked, if you don't drink the medicine, how will your injured muscles and bones recover? If it becomes a chronic disease, you will no longer be able to use the black iron formula in the future. You will regret it. Shui Yun raised her trembling left hand and wiped her tears with the back of her hand. Like a child who had been wronged, she could no longer pretend to be indifferent to Jing Chen's estrangement. You've long been bewitched by that demoness to the point where you can't tell north from south. Why would you still care about whether I'm good or bad? Today she bullied me like that and you still say that it's my fault. What's wrong with me? I just don't want to see you foolishly being used by her. She didn't use me. Don't let your imagination run wild all day. Why didn't she use you? If it weren't for you, she wouldn't have been able to become an official in the Celestial Commissioner. She wouldn't have been able to strut around. From the beginning I felt that she was a villain, but you liked her. No matter how I persuaded you, it was useless. Senior brother, if you don't listen to me now, sooner or later, she will sell you out for glory and wealth. At first, Jing Chen still patiently comforted her, but the more she talked, the more outrageous she became. His attitude suddenly became cold. I said that you don't need to worry about my affairs. This time you came to make things difficult for me. I said that I would send you back to Mount Longhu. I wasn't trying to scare you. I will arrange for you to go as soon as possible. Don't make trouble anymore. At this point he didn't want to blame anyone. But after getting to the bottom of it, he and Yushu changed from a pair of lovers to the situation they were in today because of Shui Yun. This time he was determined to send her away. Shui Yun suddenly raised her head, and a pair of resentful eyes were glued to Jing Chen's face. Her red eyes were brewing emotions that he didn't understand, but he heard her hoarse voice. You and I were childhood sweethearts and we grew up together. All the brothers and sisters in the sect knew that you had bad luck, so they all avoided you. Only I was not afraid of being implicated by you and treated you as always. Do you remember? When I was 11 and you were 15, because you saved a mountain man who was lost, he was eaten by a tiger on his way down the mountain. Martial uncle punished you to face the wall at the top of the cliff, and no one was allowed to send you food. Only I was worried that you would be hungry, so I sneaked up the cliff to see you. I was careless and was bitten by a poisonous snake on the back of my neck and I almost died. Hearing this, Jing Chen was in a trance for a moment and then said softly, I remember. He starved on the cliff for 7 days and every day he only drank some sweet dew to quench his thirst and picked wild fruits to satisfy his hunger. On the 8th day Shui Yun went up the cliff to look for him, and when she saw him, she fainted. He found that she was bitten by a poisonous snake, but he didn't have time to send her back for treatment. Instead, he sucked her blood to cure the poison and found the 7-step grass nearby to detoxify her. As a result, Shui Yun woke up and slapped him. Shui Yun let out a sorrowful laugh and said, Then you must also remember that after I woke up, I slapped you. We, the people of the Tao sect, although hate the formalities, but we also know that there is a difference between men and women. You and I had skin contact, and you are the only man who has ever taken advantage of me. Senior Martial Brother, oh Senior Martial Brother, do you really not understand, or are you just pretending? You didn't understand my feelings for you before, but do you still not understand now? She looked at him in a daze and couldn't help but feel a trace of hope in her chest. However, seeing his expression slowly change from surprise to helplessness, and from helplessness to embarrassment, but there was no joy, her heart sank inch by inch. Shui Yun, Jing Chen turned his head to avoid Shui Yun's burning gaze and said in a low voice, I don't have any romantic feelings for you. He had read the biography of Lu Yi given to him by Yushu many times. That was the first time he knew about love, and she taught him what romantic feelings were. To him, it was something that he couldn't suppress no matter how many times he chanted the clear heart incantation. He had feelings for Xiaoyu, but he didn't have feelings for his junior sister. Then let me ask you a question. Shui Yun refused to back down and raised her head to ask, In your heart, between me and Miss Yu, who is more important? Jing Chen shook his head, You are my junior sister and she is my friend. Why do we have to compare? Then let me ask you this. If Miss Yu and I are in danger together and you save one but the other will die, then who will you save first? Jing Chen didn't know how to be perfunctory and he didn't know how to lie. He thought for a moment and then said, I can't choose. One was his junior sister from the same sect, and the other was the person he liked. He didn't want to see either of them die. Shui Yun suddenly laughed. As she laughed, tears fell and she was indescribably sad. Why can't you choose? Didn't you already choose? Today she and I were both humiliated. You looked at me coldly, but you didn't dare to blame her for me. Senior brother, you are so cruel to me. I came all the way to the capital to find you, hoping that you would find the person to destroy my life as soon as possible. Maybe one day I can live with you together, but you threw away my sincere heart like a pair of worn-out shoes. How can I bear this? In the end, she was just a pitiful person who couldn't get what she wanted and couldn't get what she wanted. Listening to Shui Yun's accusations, Jing Chen couldn't help but blame himself. She cried so hard, but he was also moved. After hesitating for a moment, he finally raised his hand and gently placed it on her head, trying to forgive her for what she had done to others and herself. He had always wondered why she always targeted Yushu, and now he had the answer. "Don't cry, it's all my fault." As he stroked her hair, all of Shui Yun's pride and backbone disappeared. She wrapped her arms around Jing Chen's waist, buried her head in his arms and sobbed, "Senior brother, don't ignore me. Don't hate me, let's be like before, okay? I will listen to you. You miss you, I won't fight with her anymore. If you let me drink the medicine, I will obediently drink the medicine. Don't let me go, senior brother, boohoo." Jing Chen's eyes dimmed. He patted her on the shoulder and let her vent for a while. It wasn't until her crying gradually subsided and her tears dried up that he made a promise with her. "Don't interfere in my affairs anymore, don't target Yushu anymore. Take good care of your injuries. If you can do it, I won't send you away. Otherwise, I won't believe anything you say anymore." Shui Yun hurriedly nodded and promised, "I'll remember, I won't do it again." The two had just made an agreement. Eunuch Ning, who had been waiting outside for a long time, finally waited until the crying inside stopped. Then he quietly went to the door and reported in a loud voice, "Young master, official Yu is here to visit." The two people in the room heard it at the same time. Shui Yun twisted her neck uncomfortably. Jing Chen glanced at her, walked to the door, opened it and said to Eunuch Ning, who was standing there with a shrimp-like waist, "Let's go, take me there." "Wait," Shui Yun hurriedly stopped him and ignored Eunuch Ning. She bit her lip and begged, "Can I go with you? I want to see Miss Yu and apologize to her in person." Jing Chen didn't say anything. He just quietly observed the expression on her face to see if she was sincere. "I'm serious," Shui Yun sniffed and said with a pout, "Can you believe me again? Call someone in to help you freshen up. I'll wait for you outside." Yushu sat for more than an hour. In the middle, she got up and walked her legs twice before Jing Chen came. Seeing Jing Chen push Shui Yun in, Yushu's eyebrows were almost raised to her forehead. She glanced at Shui Yun's eyelids that were so swollen that she could barely open them, then shifted her gaze to Jing Chen. She saw that there was a patch of uneven color at the waist of his white robe. She immediately had an idea. "Jing Chen, I have something to discuss with you. Can I talk to you in private?" Outside of the Celestial Commissioner, Yushu didn't deliberately call him the right magistrate to make sarcastic remarks about Jing Chen, not to mention that she was the one asking for help. Jing Chen could see that she didn't want to see Shui Yun. He wanted to explain, but Shui Yun said first, "Miss Yu, I insisted on seeing you. Can you listen to me first?" Yushu squinted at her and saw that Shui Yun was struggling to keep her eyelids open and trying to pretend to be sincere. She didn't think much of it in her heart. This morning at Taishi restaurant, she fought with her like a black-eyed chicken. Now she came to show off. She didn't buy it. "I have nothing to say to you." Seeing that Yushu refused to buy it, Shui Yun turned her head and gave Jing Chen a pleading look. Jing Chen didn't want Yushu to misunderstand, so he had to say, "Shui Yun knows she was wrong. She wants to apologize to you." Shui Yun hurriedly replied, "Yes, I'm here to apologize. Today's matter was my fault. I shouldn't have made up those crimes to frame you. I already know I was wrong. Can you forgive me this time for the sake of senior brother's feelings? I promised my senior brother that I won't make things difficult for you in the future." Hearing this, Yushu pursed her lips and looked at the sincere Shui Yun with a faint smile. She said, "There's no need to apologize. I can't accept it. Besides, you maliciously spread rumors about me. I also scolded you a few times. It's not like I lost anything." Shui Yun's expression was a bit embarrassed. In fact, what Yushu said was right. The person who lost today wasn't the other person, but she. "Is there anything else? If not, can you leave for a while? I have something important to talk to Jing Chen about. It's not convenient for you to be present." Yushu's straightforwardness was annoying. Although Shui Yun was mentally prepared to be ridiculed by her, when she really met her, she realized that she had overestimated her forbearance. "Go back and rest." Jing Chen turned his back and whispered to Shui Yun, "Remember what you promised me." Finishing, he ignored Shui Yun's hesitant expression and had Eunuch Ning send her away. When Shui Yun left, Jing Chen and Yushu intentionally didn't mention her again. It was as if the assessment during the day hadn't happened. The two went to a quiet place and the servants left. Only then did they feel at ease to talk. "What urgent matter is there to find me so urgently?" Jing Chen knew that Yushu wouldn't come to the Princess Fu for no reason. On the way here, Yushu thought about it and decided to tell Jing Chen, "I want to tell you something. You have to be calm. Whether you are surprised or angry, you have to listen to what I have to say. Jing Chen was confused, but he still nodded and promised her, "Speak, I'm listening." Yushu looked around and made sure there wasn't a single person around. She moved closer to him and said in a small voice, "The portrait you gave me yesterday, I know who that person is." Jing Chen's eyes narrowed, and he couldn't help but press his hands down on the stone table. "My eldest brother has a chief in his fu surnamed Su. Last May I saw him in Yang." As expected, Jing Chen was shocked and said, "Your eldest brother, Shui Rui? It's his family servant. Are you sure you didn't make a mistake? The person who caused him to lose his memory and be seriously injured was actually the right prime minister?" Yushu frowned and said, "I'd rather I made a mistake. Unless that Governor Su has a twin brother who looks exactly like him, I won't make a mistake." She didn't have a photographic memory, but some people and things that left a deep impression on her. Once she remembered them, she wouldn't forget them easily. Jing Chen was silent. Yushu didn't have the mood to guess what he was thinking at the moment. She talked to him according to the draft she prepared on the way. "At present, you only remember such a person. You can't confirm who ordered him to kill you, and it may not be Minister Shui. But if you give the portrait to the emperor, once they find out who the person in the portrait is, the whole Shui family will be out of luck. Even my eldest brother will be suspected by the emperor as a traitor. I'll tell you the truth. I just want you to do me a favor. Go to the palace and find out if the emperor wants to put up a wanted poster or conduct a secret search. You have to let me know. Don't keep me in the dark." Yushu shamelessly came to plead with Jing Chen. She also knew that this was not moral. Jing Chen was the victim, but she wanted to persuade him to help her keep a lookout for the suspect. So she didn't want to lie to him. But she had no other way. In order to protect Shui Rui, she could only put down the old grudges and come to Jing Chen to ask for a favor. "Don't you have any doubts?" Jing Chen suddenly asked her. "If it was Prime Minister Shui who sent people to kill me, how could Shui Rui not know about it? Do you believe him so much?" Yushu frowned. Her eyes met his probing gaze indifferently, and she slowly said a few words. Chapter 708. Yushu finally persuaded Jing Chen to help her enter the palace to inquire about the news. She declined his invitation and left with eunuch Ning. When she was about to reach the main gate, she was called from behind. "Miss Yu, please wait." It turned out that Shui Yun and the others were waiting here. Yushu didn't have a good expression when she saw her, but Shui Yun seemed to have no self-awareness and sent eunuch Ning away. Together with the maidservant who was pushing the wheelchair, only the two of them were left in the aisle facing each other. Yushu waited to see what other tricks she had up her sleeve so she didn't turn around and leave. Just now, when Jing Chen brought her to apologize, Yushu knew that Shui Yun wasn't sincerely convinced. Sure enough, now that Jing Chen wasn't in front of her, Shui Yun let the cat out of the bag as soon as she opened her mouth. "Don't be complacent. I promised my senior brother that I wouldn't make trouble for you, but if I find out that you dare to do something unfavorable to him, I will never let you go." Yushu rolled her eyes at her. She had never seen such a shameless person. She was clearly the one who deserved it. Now that things had come to this, she was still saying such harsh words to her. She was simply asking for a beating. "There are some things that I'm too lazy to say, but you always don't know when to stop. I think it's better to make it clear to you, lest you think that I don't care and will forgive you easily." Yushu clasped her arms with one hand and tilted her head to play with her nails. Her eyes were full of ridicule as she stared at her and said, "In the past, you and I didn't interfere with each other. It was you who first tried to harm my life. I didn't care about your past friendship with Jing Chen, but who would have thought that you didn't repent and tried to do bad things to me again and again? After thinking about it, you keep pestering me and won't let me go. Could it be that you are a young girl who is yearning for love and admires your good senior brother, which is why you hate me? Am I right?" Shui Yun showed a trace of anger on her face when her thoughts were exposed. She gritted her teeth and didn't admit it. When Yushu saw this, she giggled and said, "It's a pity. The falling flower is longing for love, but the heartless stream is heartless. I'm not afraid to tell you that even if Jing Chen and I can't become a couple, he will absolutely not let you have your wish. I advise you to give up your wishful thinking." Shui Yun secretly warned herself not to listen to Yushu's nonsense, but Yushu's tone was so firm that she couldn't help but retort, "I grew up with senior brother. Don't I know better than you what kind of person he is? Don't provoke us here." Tsk tisk. Yushu shook her head and looked at her with sympathy. "If you really knew him well, you wouldn't have become so ugly and disgusting. He's not blind. Why would he like a girl like you?" Shui Yun knew that she was deliberately angering her, but she couldn't restrain her anger. She retorted sarcastically, "If he doesn't like me, could it be that he likes a woman with a heart as poisonous as snakes and scorpions like you?" Yushu put away her smile and said coldly, "Even if I have a heart as poisonous as snakes and scorpions, I'm still better than a shit-stirrer like you." She was the one who came to harm her life first, and then she was the one who didn't let it go. In the end, she still had the right to scold her for being vicious. When Shui Yun heard Yushu ridicule her, she was so angry that her face turned red. She grabbed the armrest of the wheelchair and said loudly, "Who are you calling a shit-stirrer?" "I'm talking about you." Yushu looked at her from top to bottom with a face full of disgust and maliciously said, "Shit-stirrer, you don't know what you're doing all day long. You're dirty yourself, but you can't even see others clean. I hate people like you the most. If it weren't for the fact that I don't like the stench on your body and don't want to dirty my hands, I would have already slapped you dozens of times with your shamelessness and let you show off in front of me again. In the future, you'd better not appear in my sight again. Otherwise, every time I see you, I'll take care of you." After saying these harsh words, Yushu didn't give Shui Yun a chance to catch her breath. She flung her sleeves and strode away. Shui Yun, who had been stifled by Yushu, was left behind. Her face was as red as a pig's liver and she almost fainted. Originally, she had purposely waited here to warn Yushu not to get close to Jing Chen again. Who would have thought that instead of scaring her away she would be scolded? By the time she caught her breath, Yushu had long disappeared. What else could she do? She could only swallow her anger. She suffered a beating for nothing, but she couldn't let Jing Chen know, lest he wrap her up and send her back to Mount Longhu in a fit of anger. When Yushu came out of the princess's residence, her footsteps were a bit lighter. On one hand she talked to Jing Chen. On the other hand she killed an elite monster, Shui Yun, before she left. It wasn't easy for her to have a good time. When she got home she first covered her head and slept. In the middle of it she woke up to eat dinner before going back to sleep. She only woke up the next day when the rooster crowed. She estimated that Song Dali should have arrived at Fenghua Manor by now. Perhaps he had already met Shui Rue and brought her words to him. Calculating the distance, Shui Rue would only be back tomorrow at the earliest. It was useless for Yushu to be anxious. She could only suppress the anxiety in her heart and go to the Celestial Commissioner's office as usual. 2 days ago, everyone was avoiding her when they saw her, but today they were being intimate again. It must be because of what happened during her evaluation yesterday. She secured her official position, but Shui Yun was expelled. The rumors about her seducing third young Master Yin were dispelled. She greeted the people around her along the way and dragged her way to the Kunling Bureau. She saw someone waiting at the gate. It was Cui Shui. She had promised to waive her 30,000 taels gambling debt yesterday. He was worried that she would go back on her word, so he came to arrest her early in the morning. However, Yushu didn't think about reneging on her debt. She led Cui Shui into the bureau with a smile and brought him to her office. She sent Wen Xiao into the door and Cui Shui took out the 30,000 taels IOU that he had retyped and exchanged it for the 60,000 taels IOU written by Cui Xian in Yushu's hands. Yushu didn't feel bad about losing 30,000 taels of debt. This kind of free money that came from nowhere, she would feel guilty if she took it. Cui Shui went back as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. Wen Xiao unwalked him to the door and then turned back. He stood in front of Yushu, looking as if he had something to say but was too shy to say it. Yushu couldn't stand it and pushed away the documents in her hands. She used her index finger to knock on the table and urged, "Don't hesitate. If you have something to say, say it. If not, go to work." When Xiaoan said, "I thought about what you warned me yesterday. I felt that I can't waste my time like this. I want to go back to Taisher Library to continue my studies." Yushu raised her eyelids. When Xiaoan was afraid that she would misunderstand, so he quickly explained, "It's like this. I think the bureau is not busy sometimes, but there are many things in the last 10 days of each month. I thought about it. Every day I will come to the Kunling Bureau to work for you. In the afternoon I will squeeze out some time to go to Taisher Library to listen to the lectures of the academicians. After a long time I will gain knowledge. It's better than being a dabbler now. Even if you want to promote me, I don't have the ability." When Yushu came to the Kunling Bureau to be an official, she never went to Taisher Library again. After Wen Xiao and was accepted by her, he also didn't go there. There were many rules in Taisher Library, but there was no rule that one would be expelled if he skipped classes. Therefore it was a good idea for Wen Xiao and to take time to go back to accumulate knowledge. Yushu thought for a moment. She could do without Wen Xiaoan, so she asked him, "You have been absent for 3 months. If you go back like this, will the original academician still be willing to teach you attentively? If you meet someone with a bad temper, they may kick you out on the spot. Taisha Library would not expel him, but the academicians always had the right not to let him attend classes. When Xiao An also thought about this, he said bitterly, "You have to try to know everything. I sincerely want to learn. They can't kick me out every day." Seeing that he was not afraid of boiling water, Yushu smiled. She supported her chin with one hand and pointed out a way for him. "It's hard to say for others, but I used to be a student of Academician Fang of the Eccentric Arts Department. His granddaughter and I are good sisters. I can help you to ask Academician Fang to teach you. Well, there is also Academician Sima Kue of the Astrology Department. I can also help you talk to him." Hearing this, Wen Xiao An was overjoyed. Yushu was willing to help him, which meant that she agreed to let him study separately. He also knew that his request was a little excessive. He was really ashamed, so he immediately bowed to her and said in a muffled voice, "I will never forget your kindness. Don't say nice words. You know how to work hard, so that my cultivation of you will not be in vain." Yushu felt that she didn't waste her breath yesterday. Wen Xiao An was enlightened, so she could be less worried. After all, she had accepted this little brother, so she had to be responsible for him. "Let's do it this way. I'll go to Taisha Library with you after I finish my business this afternoon and help you clear things up." Chapter 709. After Shui Yun left, Yushu didn't have to work from 9 to 5 anymore. Seeing that there was nothing to do in the afternoon, she told Xia Lan and left early with Wen Xiao An. If she wanted to plead, she couldn't go empty-handed. Considering that Wen Xiao An didn't have much money, Yushu went back to the mansion first. She picked a few things from the small warehouse she had saved up and put them in lacquer boxes. Then she went to the market and bought 2 baskets of fresh peaches and plums. Then she went to Taisha Shuyuan to look for Wen Xiao An. Yushu was now a celebrity in Taisha Shuyuan. When she became the Celestial Commissioner overnight, some people were not convinced and made irresponsible remarks. But after the Water and Land Conference, there were no more such voices. The students who had taken classes with her all felt honored when they mentioned her. It should be known that Yushu wasn't someone anyone could see. For those who hadn't seen her, she was equivalent to a legendary figure. Yushu and Wen Xiao An didn't forget to take their waist tags. After entering the door, they were recognized soon. Several young students rushed to greet them. There were 2 men and 1 woman. They were all older than Yushu, but they were all respectful when they saw her. Yushu An said a few words to them. Seeing that they were all cautious, she didn't talk much. She just asked them where Fang Zijing and Sima Kue were at this moment. Coincidentally, both academicians were there. One was in Shushui Tang and the other was at the observatory. Yushu looked at the sunset and took Wen Xiao An to Shushui Tang first. When they arrived, the class hadn't ended yet. Looking in from outside the door, they saw a room full of young teachers who were all immersed in writing. No one noticed that there were 2 people at the door. Fang Zijing, who was sitting in the hall and drinking tea, raised his head inadvertently and saw Yushu. Yushu smiled at him, bowed her head and cupped her hands in greeting. Although the emperor had granted her a title and she didn't have to salute officials below the 3rd rank, Fang Zijing could be considered as half her benevolent teacher, so how could she be rude? Fang Zijing raised his grizzled eyebrows and blew at his mustache. He did not seem very pleased to see her, but he rose shakily to his feet and carried his purple linen sleeve pot towards the door. As soon as he moved, some of the students below sensed it. They turned their heads to look and their eyes widened. Good, look who it is. Someone sat close to Sidu Qinglan and knew that she was close to Yushu, so he poked her shoulder and asked, "Is that official you?" No one dared to call him by his name. Those who had once sat cross-legged with him had to call him milord. Sidu Qinglan turned around. It was really her. Then people discovered Yushu's arrival one after another. Without waiting for Fang Zijing to cross the threshold, Su Shuitang was in an uproar. Fang Zijing suddenly turned his head and snorted. The people behind him immediately became quiet. Only Sidu Qinglan was brave enough to stand up and follow him out. Yushu smiled and invited Fang Zijing to the corridor to talk. She nodded at Sidu Qinglan, who came out from behind. She didn't mention Wen Xiao An first. She just wanted to ask if the teacher was in good health and if he was still so energetic after not seeing him for a long time. Fang Zijing didn't fall for her trick. He had already seen Wen Xiao An behind her with a gift basket in his hand. He raised his hand to take a sip of strong tea and asked directly, "Who is this boy?" Yushu took the opportunity to push Wen Xiao An in front of him. She first told him his identity and how much he admired Fang Zijing. Then she praised Wen Xiaoan, saying that he was a young talent, steady, kind, righteous and filial. In short, Wen Xiao and himself blushed when he heard it. Finally he poked him with his elbow. Wen Xiao and didn't hesitate at the critical moment. He came up and knelt down in front of Fang Zijing. He put the things in his hands on the ground and raised his hands high above his head. He bowed deeply to Fang Zijing and said, "Sir, please allow me to be your disciple." Then he kowtowed loudly. Fang Zijing was startled by his action. His goatee twitched, and he subconsciously raised his hand to help him up. "Get up." Yu Shu hurriedly said, "Get up? Academician Fang has agreed to accept you." As soon as Fang Zijing's hand touched Wen Xiaoan's sleeve, the latter straightened up with a happy face. Fang Zijing couldn't say no to him. At this time he realized what had happened. He stared at Yu Shu and said, "You really know how to take advantage of the situation." Although he said that, he didn't embarrass Wen Xiaoan. He first called Wen Xiaoan up and asked him a few simple questions. When he learned that Wen Xiaoan's studies were delayed because he was a subordinate official for Yu Shu, Wen Xiaoan looked a little better. Fang Zijing was hesitating. Situ Qinglan, who had been listening for a while, suddenly said, "Grandpa, I think Mr. Wen is very sincere. Please accept him." The three juniors in front of him begged, so Fang Zijing finally agreed. He asked Situ Qinglan to tell Wen Xiaoan about his rules, and then turned back to the room. As soon as he left, Situ Qinglan chatted with Yu Shu for a while and told Wen Xiaoan about the day of the class. Then she took Wen Xiaoan's gift and said goodbye to Yu Shu. After making a good start with Fang Zijing, Yu Shu took Wen Xiaoan to Sima Kuei and did the same thing. Sima Kuei's temper was much better than Fang Zijing's, so he immediately agreed to let Wen Xiaoan come back to class. Coming out of the observatory, Wen Xiaoan mentioned the two academicians he had paid respects to the first time. One was Jing Qin, who had already left his post to become the Celestial Commissioner. The other was Academician Qi of the Department of Feng Shui, and the other was Han Wenguang of the Department of Arithmetic. He originally wanted to pay respects to the other two. Even if he couldn't be their apprentice, he couldn't be rude. However, when Yu Shu heard the names of the two people, she frowned. Wen Xiaoan had learned to read people's faces these days. Seeing this, he hurriedly asked her what was wrong. Yu Shu didn't hide it from him. She walked under the screen wall and said bluntly, "When I first arrived at the Taisher Library, I went to pay respects to Academician Qi, but he refused to see me. The other Academician Han was my enemy. I don't know if you have heard that I passed the Dian exam and ranked first. My family held a banquet in the Wangji building to celebrate my success. However, Han Wenguang sent several disciples to provoke me and was humiliated by me. As for Academician Qi, he was on good terms with Han Wenguang, so he didn't care about me. If Wen Xiaoan was an ordinary friend of hers, she had no reason to care about his dealings. However, he was her subordinate, a little brother who swore to work for her, so she couldn't do that. She couldn't tolerate sand in her eyes. Wen Xiaoan followed her lead. After hearing what she said, he no longer mentioned paying respects to Academician Qi and Han Wenguang. Yu Shu waited for 2 days, but Shui Rui didn't come back from Fenghua Mansion. However, Jing Qin came to her and told her the worst news. Emperor Zhao Qing wanted to put up the wanted posters on the imperial list. He couldn't wait to catch all the traitors who threatened his Dan kingdom, so he chose such a direct and effective method to find them. The imperial list was very different from the usual wanted posters issued by the government. This was an order from the emperor himself, so it was easy to search the whole country. Such an extreme method could only be used by the imperial court. Unless it was a villain who had committed a great crime, the imperial court wouldn't mobilize so many people. Therefore, Governor Su of the Shui family had become a wanted criminal of the imperial court without knowing it. The emperor gave the order yesterday. He didn't trust others to do it, so he appointed Guo Huai, the officer of the Supreme Court, to give my portrait to him in the name of the murder cases in Taisher Library. He found a dozen painters to paint it overnight and secretly sent it to the surrounding counties. At the latest 2 days, the imperial list will be everywhere in Anling City. Jing Qin kept frowning when he said this. Yu Shu's heart skipped a beat. She thought of many things in an instant. The supervisor of the Shui family was not an ordinary servant. There must be many people who had seen him. The person who took over this matter was Guo Huai, the officer of the Supreme Court. He was Shui Rui's immediate superior. Who knew if he had seen Governor Su? Maybe before the imperial list was posted, someone would arrest the Shui family. Should she rejoice that the emperor was worried about Jing Chen's identity as a great calamity and didn't order the person in the portrait to be wanted as a traitor? What should she do? Things seemed to have reached a point of no return. Should she go to the Xue family now to find Prime Minister Xue and tell him that the supervisor of the Xue family was going to be wanted by the emperor as a traitor and that they should pack up and run away? She didn't even need to think to know that this was utterly impossible. Putting aside whether Xue Rui's grandfather would believe her words, what if Jing Chen was murdered in Jianya City, and the deaths of those people in Taisha Library were really done by people sent by the Xue clan? If she went to inform Xue Lingnan, she would be looking for death. Yu Shu stood there in a daze, her eyes staring blankly. Jing Chen waited for a while but she didn't reply. Seeing her bewildered look, he couldn't tell what he was feeling. He could only try to comfort her. Maybe it's not as serious as you think. Even if we catch Governor Su, we can't conclude that the Xue family is rebelling. This matter needs to be investigated by the Supreme Court before we can make a decision. Yu Shu shook her head with a bitter smile. There were some words that she couldn't say to Jing Chen. She used the time of misfortune law to predict Xue Rui's misfortune every night for 3 days in a row. She calculated until dozens of days later, but she encountered a rare blind spot. This was the drawback of the time of misfortune law. Obviously, the Xue family was going to be in trouble, but she couldn't predict what disaster would happen to Xue Rui. This meant that what Xue Rui was going to encounter was a disaster that she didn't record in her book of life and death. According to the situation, it was nothing more than rebellion and implicating. Since ancient times, when it was involved in the crime of rebellion, even the sons and grandsons of princes couldn't escape death. This was a disaster that involved 9 generations. She looked at Jing Chen anxiously. Thinking of the death that Xue Rui might face, an idea that she shouldn't have appeared in her mind. She said it without hesitation. Can you go to the palace now and tell His Majesty that you remembered something again? You remembered it wrong before and it wasn't the person in the portrait who harmed you. You only saw that person once when you were being chased. There was a moment of disbelief on Jing Chen's face. His clear, black pupils shrank slightly. This caused him to look both shocked and confused. After Yu Shu said it, she felt that she had gone too far. She just didn't want Xue Rui to be in trouble, but she didn't put herself in Jing Chen's shoes. Standing in his shoes, when he was stabbed with silver needles, seriously injured to the point of almost dying, and suffering from amnesia and speechlessness, if it were her, she would never let the murderer go. Now, she asked Jing Chen to go to the palace to retract the confession. It was really forcing him. I'm sorry. This apology came from Jing Chen's mouth. He slowly recovered from his surprise and shook his head at Yu Shu. He said in a low voice, I can't do this. Did you forget that the person who harmed me might be the person who wanted to kill you? You absolutely can't let them go. Yu Shu felt her heart tighten. Even if she had already looked down on the past relationship with Jing Chen, she could still clearly feel the weight of her in Jing Chen's heart. I'm not saying to let them go, what I mean is, Jing Chen didn't listen to her. He stood up and put on a posture of refusal. His expression was cold and his tone was uncharacteristically tough. Don't try to persuade me. Don't try to persuade me. I won't listen to you on this matter. I can promise to help you enter the palace to gather information, but I can't help you lie. Have you ever thought about the 2 female students who died in Taisha Library? They were so innocent. You only thought about the safety of your sworn brother. Have you ever thought about yourself? Have you ever thought about the people who became your scapegoat? This was the first time that Jing Chen had said such harsh words to Yu Shu since they had parted ways. He had seen the fickleness of the world. He was no longer that greenhorn. He had his own principles of right and wrong. Yu Shu's expression was extremely ugly, but she felt that she was in the wrong and didn't argue with Jing Chen. Seeing that it was a dead end, she could only give up. I'll go back first. I'll tell you when I have news. Jing Chen was probably afraid that Yu Shu would try to persuade him again, so he didn't dare to stay any longer. He didn't wait for Yu Shu to ask him to leave and left in a hurry. After he left, Yu Shu sat for half an hour. When the moon was in the middle of the sky, she wiped her face and went back to her room to ask the servants to boil water for a bath. She washed herself from head to toe and drank half a pot of strong tea to force her mind to calm down. In the dead of night, she closed the door and took out the little green hut. She burned a stick of Tihu incense and took out the 6 lines copper coin that she was used to using. She focused on divining for Xue Rui. The 6 lines magic asked for the near but not the far. It asked for details but not the brief. To ask about human affairs, one must know the eye of 4 lines, otherwise there was no way to start. Therefore, when she found that she couldn't calculate the fortune or misfortune of Xue Rui, She couldn't immediately burn the incense to ask. Instead, she waited for Jing Chen to bring the exact news before using the Tihu incense. In this way she divined until the dawn outside the window. The moon set and the sun rose. "Master, it's time to get up." Someone knocks on the door but Yushu doesn't pay attention to it. There are a few Yao coins scattered beside her hand, and she holds a dry brush pen in one hand. She stares at the messy Yao numbers on the toilet paper in a trance, changing them into good or bad luck. As a result, she gradually became clear. She closed her sore eyes and her head was buzzing. It was bad, very bad. According to her calculations, the Shui clan wouldn't be able to escape a calamity after the imperial bulletin was posted. Shui Rui had the calamity of imprisonment on him, and he was on the verge of a calamity. Moreover, there were 5 ghosts by his side and villains causing mischief, so it was difficult to see a chance of survival. Yushu could imagine that when the whole Shui family was in prison, many people were waiting to hit them when they were down. They were involved in the case of treason. It was almost a death sentence. Who dared to get involved in the disaster of the whole family? Not to mention helping them, she was afraid that they couldn't wait to get rid of the trouble. The last wisp of Tihu incense burned out. The fresh fragrance seemed to be pervasive. Yushu closed her eyes and greedily inhaled the refreshing smell. When she opened her eyes again, there was a circle of bright brilliance in her black and white eyes, which swept away the previous decadence. Chapter 7:10. On the 15th day of the 10th month, a peddler who had gone out to do business with a shoulder pole passed by the gate of the yamen. He found that many people were gathered under the notice board, pointing and discussing something. He walked closer curiously and saw that there was a notice with yellow edges pasted on the wooden board that was hanging high up. He heard someone say, "Tiske, this is a wanted criminal of the imperial court. The higher-ups say that he has killed several people. Whoever can catch him and send him to the yamen can get 100 taels of gold." The peddler was illiterate. He clicked his tongue and stared at the portrait on the left. It was a man in his 40s with broad eyebrows, long and narrow eyes, and a small mustache on his mouth. Just as the imperial notice was put up, someone recognized the wanted criminal of the imperial court on the portrait. This person happened to be a guest of Ning Wangfu. Once he found out about this, he went straight to Ning Wangfu without a word. Wow, the second chief steward of Prime Minister Shui's Fu was actually a wanted criminal by the emperor. Lu Hao was in the Fu at the moment and didn't go anywhere. There was supposed to be a court conference on the 15th day of the lunar month, but after the Mid-Autumn Festival, the emperor lifted his confinement order but didn't allow him to return to court. He could only hold it in. When Lu Hao heard the news, he was stunned for a moment and then laughed. He waved his hand and rewarded the person with a gold ingot. He turned around and went to discuss with his confidants how to handle it. With Lu Hao's natural political sensitivity, the emperor suddenly issued an imperial notice of a wanted criminal without any warning. It could be seen that the situation was tense. The criminal couldn't have just killed a few people. There was more to this than meets the eye. Ning Wangfu had 2 advisors with outstanding strategies. They immediately gave Lu Hao a few excellent ideas. One of them was to strike first and gain the upper hand. It suited Lu Hao the best. The second chief steward of Shui's Fu wasn't an ordinary person. There were many people in Anling who knew him, so no one dared to expose him for a while. This credit couldn't be left unclaimed by Ning Wang and his subordinates. He had to find the most suitable person. Who was this person? King Ning's cousin, 3rd young master of Prime Minister Yin's residence, left vice commander of the Yulin Guards Yin Yuanrong. There were 2 advantages to letting Yin Yuanrong go. Firstly, Yin Yuanrong was the commander of the Yulin Royal Guards, which was His Majesty's Imperial Guards. He could directly lead his troops to the Shui residence to capture the person. The greater the commotion, the more disadvantageous it would be for the Shui family. The Ministry of Justice was full of Shui Lingnan's people. In order to avoid arousing suspicion, the case would definitely be handled by the Supreme Court. The Chancellor of the Supreme Court, Guo Huaiyan, was a stubborn person. If they wanted to get first-hand information, someone had to be involved. If Yin Yuanrong was the first to arrest the person, he would definitely be able to find a way to interfere. Third, even though they were cousins, but everyone knew that Yin Yuanrong and Ning Wangfu did not interact frequently. After the incident, no one would think of Lu Hao. Therefore, Lu Hao immediately gave the order. Quickly go and find out where Yuanrong is right now. Send an unfamiliar person to take down the imperial notice and find him. We must have him bring people to the Shui Manor to capture him. Even if Yin Yuanrong did not want to get into trouble, he could not turn a blind eye to someone taking down the imperial notice to sue him. That would be defying the emperor's order. Less than 2 hours after the imperial notice was posted in the busy streets of Anling City, a small group of Yulin royal guards arrived at the gate of the Shui Manor. The left deputy commander of the Yulin royal guards, Yin Yuanrong, led the way with a straight face. He knocked on the door and entered. Shui Lingnan had just returned from the palace. Because of what happened in the morning court, he was not in a good mood, so he wandered in the garden to relax. In order to fight for the right to lead the army to the Wei Kingdom, several generals fought fiercely in the morning court. Today the faction of the left prime minister expressed their stance and brought up the matter of Lord Dongjing leading the army again. The emperor looked hesitant, but in fact he was already impatient. Shui Lingnan did not comment on whether Lord Dongjing was leading the army or not. He had discussed this matter with Shui Rue in private. Both grandfather and grandson thought that it was not the right time to send troops to attack the Wei Kingdom now. Master, something has happened. A low shout interrupted Shui Lingnan's thoughts. He turned around with his hands behind his back and saw the old steward, who had always been steady, running towards him from the other side of the flower pond. What's the hurry? The old steward was old. He stopped to catch his breath and reported, the Yulin royal guards came to arrest someone. They took the imperial notice and said that Su Li of our manor is a wanted criminal of the imperial court under the emperor's order. I've calmed him down. You should hurry to the front and have a look. Shui Lingnan was confused. What wanted criminal of the imperial court? What imperial notice? The old steward was so anxious that he could not explain clearly. Shui Lingnan could only rush to the front yard with doubts. Turning around the winding corridor, they could see from afar that there were more than 10 imperial guards dressed in black and red armor standing in the corridor in front of the main hall. The person in the lead was wearing a silver soft armor and a cloud crown. He had a youthful face full of vigor. He was actually the third son of the Yin family. Minister Shui. Yin Yuanrong had no choice but to come to Shui Lingnan. His expression was a little sour. He cupped his hands towards Shui Lingnan and performed a simple military salute, calling him minister instead of prime minister. Of the 6 ministries, only the Ministry of War and the Ministry of Personnel maintained the position of minister. The other 4 ministries were headed by the left and right assistant ministers. Yin Yuanrong's grandfather Yin Tianho was the minister of the Ministry of Personnel, while Shui Lingnan was the minister of the Ministry of War. When Shui Lingnan heard the way he addressed him, he knew that the man had come to deal with official matters. With a solemn expression, he asked, "May I know the reason why Commander Yin has brought people to my manor to arrest someone?" Yin Yuanrong did not waste words. He waved the imperial notice in his hand and said, "This is the imperial notice that was posted early this morning. Take a look for yourself." The old steward went forward to receive it. When he stole a glance at the portrait on it, his heart immediately jumped. He stiffly handed it over to Shui Lingnan. Then Shui Lingnan saw the portrait on the notice and the wanted poster. His expression abruptly changed and his hands trembled slightly. Seeing this, Yin Yuanrong said, "Just now, someone removed the imperial notice to report to me that he knows the person in the portrait." As he said this, he dragged a timid scholar over and patted his shoulder. The scholar met Shui Lingnan's fierce gaze and stammered, I know the person in the portrait. It's a chief steward of this manor with the surname Su." As soon as he finished speaking, Yin Yuanrong pulled him to the side and said to Shui Lingnan, "You heard him. Would the old minister please call this head steward Su out to see me so that I can verify his authenticity?" Shui Lingnan held the imperial notice that had been smeared with starch. His emotions fluctuated several times. No one knew what he was thinking at the moment. "Go find Su Li," he turned around and ordered. "Master." A few drops of cold sweat appeared on the old steward's forehead. He called out as if he was pleading but did not move. Shui Lingnan's expression darkened. He ordered, "Go find him." Based on this situation, Yin Yuanrong more or less had an idea. This Governor Su of the Shui Manor most likely had the same face as the criminal in the portrait on the imperial notice. He scrutinized Shui Lingnan's expression without the slightest hesitation. The imperial notice was vague. It only said that the criminal was a murderer, but it didn't say who he had killed and why the emperor had ordered him to be wanted. As the chief steward of the prime minister manor, he must be Shui Lingnan's confidant. How could Shui Lingnan not be involved in the serious crime he had committed? Chapter 711. The second chief steward of the Shui estate was a wanted criminal by the imperial court. The imperial army broke into the prime minister's estate in broad daylight and captured him. This news seemed to grow wings and spread to the ears of many people. Yin Yuanrong brought Su Li to the Yamen of the Supreme Court, with Xue Lingnan following him. Even though this head steward Su bore a striking resemblance to the criminal on the imperial proclamation, he insisted that he hadn't killed anyone, so they needed to verify his words. The group arrived at the Supreme Court and brought the person in front of Guo Huaiyan. Guo Huaiyan hadn't been able to sleep well for the past 2 days. When he first received the portrait from the emperor, he had fallen into a situation where it was unrewarding to do so. He and the Xue Lingnan family had been friends for generations and often interacted. How could he not recognize Su Li? He wanted to remind Xue Lingnan, but the emperor had ordered him to keep his mouth shut. Before the proclamation was published, he was not allowed to say anything. Even the dozen or so temporary painters were separated and supervised separately. After they finished painting, they were not allowed to go home. This made Guo Huaiyan not dare to act rashly. Thus, when things came to a head, everyone was kept in the dark. Now that he saw Xue Lingnan, he felt a trace of awkwardness. Due to Yin Yuanrong's presence, he couldn't say anything. Xue Lingnan also wouldn't take the initiative to speak. He stood to the side and watched Su Li explain himself. "My lord, you've wronged me. This one has never committed a crime, and I don't know why I have the same face as the criminal on the imperial proclamation. My lord, please investigate and clear this one's name." Strictly speaking, Su Li was not a servant. In his early years, when Xue Lingnan was leading the army into battle, he was once a foot soldier and earned military merits. Later, when Xue Lingnan handed over his military power, he willingly stayed under Xue Lingnan as a steward. He was loyal and devoted and knew how to repay kindness. Guo Huaiyan had a headache. Emperor Zhaoqing had issued a secret edict. Once someone was caught, there was no need for a public trial. First, the person would be locked up and strictly guarded, awaiting punishment. At the time, he hadn't expected the criminal to be a rather respectable chief steward of the Xue family. Since you know that you look exactly like the person in the portrait, you should be suspicious. Someone bring this suspect into prison and temporarily detain him. After Guo Huaiyan finished speaking, he glanced at Xue Lingnan, as if afraid that Xue Lingnan would question him. However, Xue Lingnan didn't say anything to stop him. The Supreme Court has always been fair and just. If you have not committed a crime, they will not misjudge you. On the other hand, if you have committed a crime, they will not let you get away scot-free. Ali, take care of yourself. After hearing his words, Su Li seemed to be calmer than before. He did not struggle and allowed the officers to take him away. When Yin Yuanrong saw that there was nothing for him to do, he was happy to be at ease. With a wave of his hand, he led his men away. Guo Huaiyan coughed twice and invited Xue Lingnan to the back hall. Now that there was no one else around, she apologized to him and said guiltily, "It's not that I don't want to tell you, but His Majesty has issued a death sentence. Anyone who leaks this information will face the death penalty." Xue Lingnan nodded, not intending to blame him. "You are a loyal ruler, I have no complaints. However, I have a few questions to ask. Can you give me a clear answer?" Guo Huaiyan had a difficult expression. "I know what you want to ask. I will tell you the truth. Right now, even I am confused. His Majesty only ordered me to put up the notice. Other than what is written on the notice, I don't know anything else. I am unable to help." Xue Lingnan knew that things were not good. He knew that the situation was worse than he had imagined. Su Li had been detained for no reason. He was definitely waiting to be interrogated in private. Then it definitely wasn't as simple as killing a few people as written on the emperor's notice. If things went wrong, his entire family would be implicated. "Jingming, you really don't know who drew this portrait? Old Gidge, you still don't believe my words?" Guo Huaiyan smiled bitterly. "I am also curious as to who slandered His Majesty and caused this incident." Xue Lingnan couldn't get any inside information from him, so he didn't linger. He only asked him to take care of Su Li, who was in prison, and bring him news to let him know if the person was good or bad. Guo Huaiyan agreed and personally escorted Xue Lingnan to the Yamen. Seeing him get on the sedan chair, he then hurriedly returned. The person had been captured. He had to quickly return to the palace to report. The emperor's notice had only been put up for less than half a day and the criminal had already been captured. This was a rare occurrence. Xue Lingnan didn't go anywhere else after coming out of the Supreme Court. He went straight home and first sent someone to find his second son. Xue Lin was an assistant minister in the Ministry of War. Recently, there had been a lot of activity in the court because of the war against the Wei nation. He couldn't be idle. Every 2 or 3 days he would be pulled by people to lobby him. Today he returned home early. He didn't even have time to change into his official robes before going to see Xue Lingnan. "Father, I heard that the Yulin Forest Guards captured people early in the morning. What happened?" Shui Lingnan stood by the window of the study. He waved his hand and said, "Close the door and come over to talk." Shui Lin already has a bad premonition. The Shui family has experienced many ups and downs since its founding. He is no longer the second young master who will cry over the death of his elder brother. He obediently closes the door and walks over. Shui Lingnan is not in a hurry to tell him what to do. He looks out the window for a while. Shui Lin's heart sank when he saw this. He thought that something had happened at home. Even his father was worried. Ali has been sent to the Supreme Court. The Emperor's notice says that he is a murderer. Even Guo Huaiyan has no right to interrogate him. He can only wait for the Emperor's decision. Shui Lingnan said. Shui Lin said in disbelief, "How can Governor Su be a murderer? He has worked hard for our family for many years. He has always been law-abiding. Why would he kill someone? Someone must have deliberately framed him and tried to frame you." Shui Lingnan shook his head. "I would also rather believe that they caught the wrong person. But the situation at hand is not up to you and me. I'm afraid that someone has set up a trap to put my family to death." "What do you mean? What kind of crime do you think it would be for the Emperor to be personally involved?" He didn't hesitate to release the Emperor's notice to arrest a suspect. "What kind of crime do you think it would be?" Shui Lin thought for a moment. He took a deep breath. The only thing that could alarm the Emperor was rebellion. "Father," he exclaimed. He didn't expect the situation to be so serious. Shui Lingnan finally turned his head to look at him. His furrowed brows relaxed. He said in a broad voice, "Don't panic. It hasn't reached a point where we can't handle it. We can still deal with it. Your son will listen to you." Shui Lingnan sighed inwardly when he saw his son's obedience and trust. He couldn't help but think of his eldest son who was envied by the heavens. If Shui Zhao was still here, he would have 100 ways to deal with this situation. "Ali has followed me for all these years, his loyalty is unwavering, he definitely wouldn't betray me, so I am not afraid of him confessing under torture. However, the Emperor is a suspicious person, he might not believe me. If he is unable to obtain any information from his mouth, there is an 80 to 90% chance that he will punish us father and son. I asked you to come here today to remind you that if you are arrested by the Supreme Court one day, don't panic. Don't mess up. When the time comes, speak your mind." Shui Lingnan put his hand on his shoulder and pressed it heavily. "You must remember that our Shui family has been loyal for generations. We don't fear slander." Shui Lin's ears were ringing. With her old father's words, it was as if she had eaten a tranquilizer in her heart and suddenly felt at ease. What about Qingbai? He suddenly remembered that Shui Rui had gone to Fenghua Mansion a few days ago and hadn't returned yet. So he asked, "Should we send someone to Fenghua Mansion to send him a message and ask him to return to the capital as soon as possible?" Shui Lingnan's expression dimmed. He said, "There's no need to do that. In the eyes of those with ulterior motives, it will make us look guilty. Let him stay there. He will come back when it's time." Shui Lin didn't hear the strangeness in his words. Instead, he complained, "Why didn't the mansion's master Feng predict any signs of such a disaster? It would be good if he could warn us in advance." There was a Dai master living in the Prime Minister's mansion. His surname was Feng. He was very good at predicting good or bad fortune. "It's not Master Feng's fault." Shui Lingnan looked towards the north and sighed. "That person has a national weapon. How could he predict it? The Emperor was the one in charge of this wanted list. The Son of Heaven carried a rare treasure and prevented mortals from scheming. Even a Dai master couldn't do anything." In the palace, Guo Huaiyan followed the eunuch leading the way into Xianda Hall. He met with Emperor Zhao Qing and simplified the matter of Yin Yuanrong capturing the suspect. When he quietly raised his head, he saw a gloomy face and quickly lowered his head again. "Are you saying that the Yulin royal guards captured someone from Prime Minister Shui's mansion?" "Yes, Your Majesty. Someone recognized the portrait on the imperial list. It was similar to the portrait of a chief steward of the Shui family. It just so happened that Commander Yin was drinking tea nearby with some people. That person took down the imperial list and went to the election. 100 taels of gold. Ordinary people would be envious at the thought of it. With such a large bounty, naturally there would be reckless people who weren't afraid of offending the Shui family." Guo Huaiyan wanted to speak up for Shui Lingnan but couldn't be too obvious. He could only pick at his words and say that the person looked similar to the portrait. He left some leeway and didn't insist on it. "You've seen the person. Tell me, does it look like him?" Emperor Zhao Qing asked. Although Guo Huaiyan wasn't a flattering official, he understood the emperor's intentions. Seeing that Emperor Zhao Qing's face wasn't angry but more suspicious, He guessed that the emperor might not be willing to believe that the murderer was from the Shui family. He had a sudden inspiration and said, "At first glance it looks similar. But upon closer inspection there are differences. Whether it is or not, it has to be investigated in detail." "Your Majesty, this case? Who is going to investigate this case? Can you give me an explanation?" "There are many secrets that cannot be shared with you." Emperor Zhaoqing poured a bucket of cold water on him and said in a deep voice, "We are preparing to have the Grand Prefect go and interrogate him. What do you think?" Guo Huaiyan said it wasn't appropriate. What was the point of having a official go and interrogate an important criminal of the imperial court? "Your Majesty is wise," he said with a wooden face. "This subject requests to assist in the investigation." Emperor Zhaoqing refused him without thinking. "It's just a criminal. There is no need to mobilize a large force. The Grand Prefect is enough." When Guo Huaiyan heard that the emperor didn't want him to interfere, he became even more curious. What was there that he couldn't know? "There is nothing else. Go. We will send an order later and have the Grand Prefect go to the Supreme Court to get the person. This subject kneels." Guo Huaiyan left with a stomach full of doubts. Just as he reached the front hall, he heard the muffled sound of a heavy object falling to the ground behind him. He couldn't help but quicken his steps. Inside the hall, Emperor Zhaoqing, who had smashed a paper town made of auspicious beasts, was full of irritation. He turned his head and said to the person behind the screen, "As my beloved subject had predicted, the person has been caught. But we never thought that it would be from the Shui family." The Grand Prefect walked out with his sleeves in his arms and bowed to Emperor Zhaoqing. He comforted in a warm voice, "Your Majesty, please calm down. We have only caught a suspect. We have not confirmed that this matter has anything to do with Prime Minister Shui. What if it is just a misunderstanding?" Emperor Zhaoqing's expression softened slightly, but his tone was still stiff. "Go and investigate as soon as possible. We do not want to wrongly blame a loyal person." He didn't want this matter to have anything to do with the Shui family. This subject takes his leave. The Grand Prefect walked out of Xuanda Hall with a pair of long sleeves hanging down. On the long corridor leading to the Moon Gate, he saw Jing Qin walking towards him. "Uncle." Jing Qin stopped to greet him. The Grand Prefect smiled gently. "The Emperor is still angry. You should go later." Jing Qin grunted and stood aside. He waited for the Grand Prefect to leave before he continued to walk in the direction of Xuanda Hall. Yu Shu had received the news about the imperial rankings in the morning. She knew in advance that this would happen. During the day she deliberately arranged for Lu Hong to run errands outside. Once there was any movement, it would be reported to her. Then when it was noon, Yu Shu left the Celestial Commissioner's office with 2 guards. She pretended to look for Shui Rui. When she arrived at the door of the Prime Minister's residence, she saw that the door was closed and it was quiet in broad daylight. She knew at a glance that something had happened. "Your Excellency, should I go and knock on the door?" Lu Hong asked. "No need. I think the master is not at home. Let's go and eat." Yu Shu looked calm on the surface, but her heart was already in a mess. She wanted to break into the door and grab someone to ask for details. But she knew that she couldn't. She was surrounded by the Emperor's spies. She had to think twice before doing anything. Fortunately, there was Jing Qin to help her pass the news. She was not in the dark. Yu Shu returned to the Celestial Commissioner's office with her guards. She stayed up for another afternoon. She didn't see Jing Qin coming, so she got off work and went home as usual. The next day Yu Shu went out a quarter earlier than usual. She didn't stop to greet people on the way and went straight to the Kunling Bureau. When she entered the door she saw Xielan and asked casually, "Did the right commander come today?" Xielan pointed upstairs. "He has been here for a while." Before she finished speaking, Yu Shu disappeared in a flash. Jing Qin leaned against the window on the 2nd floor. He saw Yu Shu as soon as she entered the courtyard. He knew that she was coming up, so he turned around and sat down. He dismissed the scribe who was talking non-stop and waited for her to go upstairs. Sure enough, her figure appeared outside the door not long after. "Jing Qin," Yu Shu didn't forget to close the door. She walked forward quickly and asked in a low voice, "How is it? Did you catch the person?" His ears trembled. After confirming that no one was eavesdropping outside the door, he guided her to sit down by the tea table on the east side. He said face to face with her, "Yesterday morning, someone announced the imperial bulletin in the east of the city. The left deputy commander of the Yulin Royal Guards, Yin Yuanrong, took people to the Shui family and took away a chief steward with the surname Su. Then they went to the Supreme Court. The person was detained. The emperor wants to send the Tito to interrogate that person. As expected, Yu Shu took a deep breath and clenched her knees. Jing Qin looked at her face and said gently, "The Tito has the great insight technique and is an insider. He is the most suitable person to interrogate. You can rest assured now. If the Shui family doesn't have bad intentions, the Tito will not make a wrong judgment." The corner of Yu Shu's mouth moved. She forced a smile, but the uneasiness in her heart grew. Chapter 7:12. On the second day after the imperial bulletin was posted, Yu Shu waited for a long time before Song Dali, who had been sent to Fenghua Manor to search for Shui, finally returned. However, what followed was another bolt from the blue. "He's gone?" In the north wing, Yu Shu's voice rose a few octaves. "This lowly one rushed to Fenghua Manor 2 days ago and found out where Sir Shui was staying. I went to find him and saw Sir Shui. I conveyed your message to him word for word. When Sir Shui heard it, he told me to rest at the post house and wait for him for a day. Once he was done with his business, he would return to the capital with me. Who would have thought that after I slept for a night, when I woke up the next day, Sir Shui was gone?" Song Dali's back was drenched in sweat and his face was covered in dirt. As soon as he returned to the Fu, he was brought to see Yu Shu. He didn't even have time to catch his breath. "I waited there for another day. On the second day, Sir Shui's disappearance alerted the Yamen and officials were sent to search everywhere. His residence, clothes and luggage were all there. His manservant also didn't run away. He was the only one. I don't know where he went, as if he disappeared into thin air." After listening to him, Yu Shu felt a little dizzy. Such a big thing happened in the capital, and at this critical moment, Shui Rui suddenly disappeared. No matter how she looked at it, she felt that these two things were closely related. There were only two possibilities for Shui Rui's disappearance. One was that he had quietly hidden himself, and the other was that someone had taken him away. According to Yu Shu's understanding of Shui Rui, he wouldn't run away without a word. That meant that he had been taken away. Then who had taken him away? Yu Shu suspected that it was Ning Wang, but then she felt that it was the emperor who had secretly done it. No matter how she thought about it, her head was spinning and she couldn't come up with a conclusion. Song Dali thought that he had messed up his task, but when he saw Yu Shu's expression, he knew that he was in trouble. He stupidly knelt down and asked for forgiveness. "It's all my fault for not doing my job well and not looking after Mr. Shui. Miss, please punish me." How could Yu Shu be in the mood to blame him? Besides, this matter had nothing to do with him. Shui Rui was not a weak scholar. He stayed in the guest house where the officials stayed, and he was accompanied by imperial guards. Yet, someone was able to capture him without a sound. It could be seen that the culprit was an expert among experts. Song Dali was just an ordinary martial artist, so how could he be a match for him? The only thing that comforted her was that it was said that there were no signs of fighting at Shui Rui's residence. It could be seen that since the other party had secretly taken him away, it was probably not to kill him. "This matter has nothing to do with you. You must be tired from running back and forth. Quickly go and rest, there's nothing else for you to do here." Yu Shu waved her hand, letting him leave. Song Dali let out a breath of relief and took out a heavy bag of money from his bosom, saying, "This is the rest that Miss gave me. There's also Mr. Shui's reward. This lowly one is ashamed to accept it." Yu Shu's expression softened as she said to him, "Just take what's given to you. Just one thing, when you go back, keep your mouth shut. Don't mention the matter of you going to Fenghua Fu to anyone, not even Zhou Hu. This lowly one understands." Song Dali held the bag of money and received a dozen taels of silver for free. Yu Shu did not blame him and happily retreated. Yu Shu closed the door and started to worry again. Last night, she had divined for Shui Rui's good or bad fortune, but it was an empty hexagram. She could not predict whether it was good or bad and was so worried that her hair had turned white. But Shui Rui had disappeared for no reason. If this matter was reported to the capital, it would add fuel to the fire. She originally thought that when Shui Rui returned to the capital, the two of them would sit down and discuss this matter. But now she was full of worries. But who could she talk to? Princess Fu, what? You're saying that Brother Shui is missing? Jing Qin looked at Yu Shu, who was sitting opposite her, in surprise. Yes, he disappeared the day before yesterday. I sent someone to Fenghua Fu to look for him, but after waiting for a night, he mysteriously disappeared. Yu Shu leaned back in her chair, holding a cup of hot medicinal tea. This was Jing Chen's own recipe for nourishing the mind. There were almost no guests at his place, so he didn't even prepare tea for them. Seeing that she didn't look well, he gave her a cup of the medicinal tea that he had just brewed. Oh. Jing Chen's eyes were full of doubt. Did he deliberately hide? Yu Shu glared at him and said snappily, "My brother did not do anything wrong, why would he hide? He must have been caught." Jing Qin tactfully closed his mouth. However, Yu Shu insisted on making things clear to him. "In the end, you haven't completely recovered that part of your memory. What you see and hear in your dream might not be the truth. Before the truth comes to light, can you not be prejudiced against my elder brother?" Jing Qin wanted to say that he was not prejudiced against Shui Rue, but he was afraid that she would be deceived by others. However, when he saw her attitude of "I'll fall out with you if you can't do it," he could only nod in agreement in order to make her stay. Then he asked a very practical question. "What do you want me to do?" He promised to help Yu Shu. Naturally, he would not let her suffer alone. He owed her and now he could make it up to her. Yu Shu calmed down and asked him, "Yesterday the chief took Su Li away from the Supreme Judiciary. Do you know where he locked him up?" "I can go and inquire about it." Yu Shu continued, "If you want to see the head advisor, there's no need to be secretive. Just ask him where he's keeping the person, and ask him if there's any information from the interrogation. This matter started because of you and you're the victim. No matter how much you care, it won't arouse their suspicions. I think they'll definitely let you see Su Li to identify the person's face. If possible, go and ask the head advisor. It's best if he can let you listen during the interrogation." Su Li, who appeared in Jing Chen's dream, became the key at the moment. If the chief got anything from him, it was likely to bring disaster to the Shui family. Jing Chen was silent for a while. He was not hesitating, but he was thinking. He looked up and saw Yu Shu's deep eyes. He said helplessly, "It is feasible, but it is a little difficult. When I deal with the chief, I am always afraid that I will say something wrong and be seen through by him." They had already experienced the power of the grand insight technique. However, Yu Shu was not worried. She was already prepared. She took out an exquisite ball from her bosom and handed it to him. She said, "Wear it closely. No matter what you say in front of the chief, he will only think that it is the truth." The hollow jade ball was only the size of a thumb and index finger. Jing Qin took it in his hand and asked curiously, "What is this?" Yu Shu avoided his eyes, but she did not lie to him. "This is the thing of your father Yin Huai. It is called Zhugai. It is the same as the strange treasure worn by the current emperor. It is cut out from the Seven Stars ruler, one of the 6 founding weapons. It can prevent divination and will not be noticed. Last night, when she went to the Wangji Tower, she spent a lot of effort to borrow it from Xan Laowu." Hearing this, Jing Qin opened his palm in a daze. He stared at the delicate ball for a while, then he closed his fingers and held it tightly. He looked at Yu Shu again. He did not ask her about the origin of this thing, but he made a request. "Can you give it to me?" Yu Shu paused and licked her lips. She saw his pleading eyes and thought of his pitiful life. She could not bear to refuse him. "If you like it, take it. It is your father's thing. I should have given it to you long ago." As soon as she said it, she regretted it. With a bitter face, she calculated how much money she would have to spend to deal with the profiteer Xan Li Shan. Maybe she would have to pay the jar of crystal on the rooftop of Wangji Tower. "Thank you." Jing Qin thanked her in a low voice. He put the small ball into his close-fitting purse and put it in his bosom. Then, a smile appeared on his calm face for the first time. Chapter 713. The matter of the Grand Commissioner taking Su Li away from the Supreme Court did not alarm anyone, so it was already 2 days later that Lu Hao received the news. His original plan was to let Yin Yuanrong go to the Shui family to arrest someone and then talk to his maternal grandfather Yin Tianho, so that Yin Yuanrong could get involved and find out the truth. It would be best if he could find some dirt on the Shui family. Now that the Grand Commissioner had taken Su Li away, it was obvious that he had received the Emperor's permission to interrogate him in secret. However, Lu Hao still went to Prime Minister Yin's residence and found Yin Tianho, who was fishing by the fish pond in the backyard. "Grandfather, someone told me that Yuanrong brought people to the Shui family to arrest a servant?" Yin Tianho sat by the pond, the corner of his robe tucked into his belt, one trouser leg rolled up to his ankles, a pair of straw shoes stained with mud, and a straw hat on his head. At first glance, he looked no different from those old men who often went fishing on Lake Jade Lion. He held the fishing pole with one hand and took out meat bait from the crock with the other. He was distracted and talked to Lu Hao. Someone took down the imperial notice and went to find him. He had no choice but to go. He said that he arrested a chief steward of the Shui family and went to the Supreme Court to question him. Lu Hao saw that he looked as if it had nothing to do with him, so he couldn't say anything. He stood with his hands behind his back, waiting for him to put down the pole. Only then did he think of an excuse. I'm just a little worried about what other people will think if they know about this. A while ago Yuanrong and Shui Qingbi had a conflict in Hengwu building. In the end, Yuanbo from my second uncle's family was arrested and sent to the Supreme Court. If someone talked about it, it would be hard to avoid linking these two things together. Yin Tianho steadily held his bamboo pole and looked up at Lu Hao. He was born with a kind face. Even when he frowned, he didn't show any fierceness. What did that bastard Yuanbo do this time? He had a lot of children and grandchildren. Not all of them were raised in front of him. Some were valued while others were neglected. However, he could clearly see who was successful and who was not. Lu Hao hesitated and said, I think second uncle was afraid that you would be angry, so he didn't dare to come to you to complain. I've asked around and this is what happened. As he said this, he roughly told him the story of how Yin Yuanbo insulted the Celestial Commissioner in Hengwu Mansion. He didn't add anything and only hid the fact that he was the one who instigated it. It just so happens that Shui Qingbi is the sworn brother of Lady Messenger Miao Ling and they have a close relationship. Since Yuan Bo had ruined the lady's reputation like this, he definitely wouldn't let it go. Therefore, he confronted Yuan Rong on the spot and proved that Yuan Bo was spreading rumors and wanted to bring Yuan Rong back for interrogation and punishment. Yuan Rong put down his pride and begged for mercy from him, but Shui Qingbi didn't let it go. In the end, he brought Yuan Rong back to the yamen. When Yin Tianho heard this, his face darkened and he scolded, useless thing. He was angry for a while. After all, he was his grandson. He couldn't help but worry. Do you know where he is now? Lu Hao sighed and said helplessly, he's still locked up in the Supreme Court's prison. He was beaten dozens of times, but Shui Qingbi refused to let him go. Second uncle went to the prison and couldn't get him out. 2 days ago he came to me. You know that Guo Huaiyan doesn't listen to anything in the Supreme Court. Even I can't do anything. Coincidentally, Shui Qingbi went out to do some work so no one could release him. You went to the prison to see him? Yin Tianho asked. I was afraid people would gossip, so I sent someone to see him. He said that he suffered some physical pain and was beaten until his skin was torn, but his life was not in danger. Lu Hao lied and didn't tell the truth. He sent someone to visit Yin Yuanbo in the prison and saw that Yin Yuanbo didn't just suffer some physical pain. Shui Qingbi was ruthless and didn't go easy on Yin Yuanbo, hitting his lower body with the rod. When Yin Yuanbo came out, he was pretty much crippled. Yin Tianho snorted and said, don't worry about him. Let him stay in there and reflect. It's time for him to learn from his mistakes. As he said this, he shook the fishing rod in his hand. He turned his head and stared at the bobber. He grabbed the fishing rod and pulled it up. The silver fishing line flashed in the air, and in the next moment, a white carp jumped out of the water. Yin Tianho caught the lively, fat fish, took the hook and threw it back into the pond. He put away the rod and stood up with the basket. You're not fishing anymore? Lu Hao asked. Yin Tianho took off his hat to cool himself, revealing a head of messy white hair. He looked like an old man. If I'm in a bad mood, how can I have the appetite to eat fish? After grumbling, he ignored Lu Hao and walked back alone with his fishing gear. Lu Hao knew that he had the temper of an old child and didn't have any discontent. He picked up the snuff bottle that he had dropped on the rock and followed. In the afternoon, Lu Hao returned to Ning Wang Fu. The noon meal was at the Yin Fu. Following Yin Tianho's tastes, there was a table of vegetarian chicken and duck. He didn't eat well, so when he came back, he had the servants cook a Sichuan spicy meal and set it up in Wang Feng Pavilion. He ordered 2 of the Fu's entertainers to come and sing for the afternoon. After Lu Hao's wedding, he had promoted his 2 Shirche to Shu Fei. One of them was called Yao Hong. She had a beauty that shamed the moon and the flowers. She had entered the Fu for 3 months and was in the middle of being pampered. Hearing that Lu Hao was in the garden, she hurriedly dressed and came to find him. Lu Hao saw her come and beckoned her to his side. With one hand on her shoulder, he allowed her to feed him wine. He carefully served, occasionally grumbling. His mood was just right. Suddenly, a Taijian that was in charge of managing the inner courtyard jogged over from the other end of the fake mountain. He stopped outside Wang Feng Pavilion and called out in a low voice to Lu Tan, Your Highness, please report. Making a hand gesture that others didn't understand, Lu Hao waved his hand to interrupt the babbling entertainers. He lightly pushed Yao Hong and pointed at a patch of flowers not far away. He said, There's a bunch of begonia blooming over there. Pick a big one back and you will put it on for you. Yao Hong knew that he was driving her away. She sensibly got up and smiled coquettishly as she covered Lu Hao's chest. Turning her head, she walked towards the patch of flowers. The Taijian hurriedly came forward and whispered in Lu Hao's ear. He quickly said, "The lady in the courtyard is about to give birth. Her illness flared up 4 hours ago. Since you weren't here, this servant boldly brought an old woman in to help her with the birth." Lu Hao's eyebrows jumped. Counting the days, the woman's child was conceived in February. It was now 9 months. It was about time for the child to be born. "Can she give birth?" he asked. The midwife said that the position of the fetus is very good. It won't be too difficult. Lu Hao suddenly couldn't sit still. Half a year ago he stepped forward to protect Ji Xingxuan. He put her under his eyelids. He wanted to find out who the child in her belly belonged to. He wanted to find out who snatched him first. The truth was about to be revealed. He couldn't wait a moment longer. Let's go see." In a place that no one could reach in the Hoyuan, Wang Yi was raising a woman that couldn't see the light. That high wall was covered with red silk grass all year round. On the other side of the wall, there was a sealed little yard. There was only a secret door behind the vines that could only be opened from the outside. If the people outside didn't go in, the people inside couldn't come out. Lu Hao stood under the only old locust tree in the courtyard. He could clearly hear the woman's painful screams, but he didn't feel any pity. He just waited impatiently. He had been waiting here for half an hour. Why hasn't it been born yet? He waved his hand for the Taijin Zheng Cheng who was under the wall to come over. He didn't have any children in Ningguang Fu. It was the first time he saw a woman give birth. He didn't know that some women could endure a day from labor to birth. "Wang Yi, don't blame me. Giving birth is like this." Zheng Qing had a smile on his face. In his mind, the child in the belly of the girl in the room was definitely Wang Ye's flesh and blood. He took Lu Hao's impatience as worry. At this time, a heart-wrenching scream came from the room. Not long after, the clear cries of a baby filled the yard. Zheng Qing smiled when he heard this. He hurried to the door and asked inside, "Is it Gongzi or Xiaojia?" The older woman inside panted as she answered, great joy, it's a Gongzi." Inside the room, Ji Xingxuan was lying on her back on the bed. The towel on her forehead was already soaked. A few strands of black hair stuck to her face. She narrowed her eyes and struggled to turn her head. She found the wrinkled little fellow in the midwife's hands. In an instant, it was like a fire was burning in her heart. It was so hot that tears flowed uncontrollably. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Ji Xingxuan was moved to the next room by 2 strong and mute servants. They fed her a cup of ginseng soup and changed her into a clean bedding. A quilt was placed over her body. She washed her face and wrapped her hair. Then she went to the yard and asked Lu Hao to come in. The room was filled with a cold fragrance that covered the smell of blood on her body. When Lu Hao came in, he stared straight at Ji Xingxuan. Since her belly grew bigger day by day, he didn't come to see her. After 2 or 3 months, when he saw her again, he felt that she was a completely different person from the cold and aloof woman that he was infatuated with. Her cheeks were plump and her eyelids were swollen. She was no longer beautiful. All that was left was a body that made people feel sick. Lu Hao frowned and sat down in front of her. Ji Xingxuan opened her eyes. She was not surprised to see him. She opened her mouth and asked, "Where is my child?" Lu Hao said, "He is next door. Don't worry, he is fine." Without waiting for Ji Xingxuan to heave a sigh of relief, his next words caused all the muscles in her body to tense up. "However, if you don't answer me honestly, I can't guarantee that you'll ever see that bastard again." When she heard him call her child a bastard, Ji Xingxuan did not get angry. On the contrary, she was very calm and retorted him word by word, "My child is not a bastard. If you want to know who his father is, don't try to provoke me. I can tell you some secrets that you can't even dream of. I promise that I won't let you down. But you have to promise me something first." She was very clear that the birth of the child was equivalent to letting Lu Hao control her life. So what she needed to do now was to protect the mother and child. Lu Hao was very interested in this secret that she mentioned. He crossed his legs and raised his chin to ask her, "What do you want? Tell me." Ji Xingxuan slowly exhaled so that her voice would not tremble and sounded more confident. Chapter 7:14. I want you to help me change my appearance and move out of this ghastly place. Let me become your Shirchia and, together with my child, openly appear in front of everyone. Lu Hao was not very surprised that Ji Xingxuan had made such a request. "You still make things difficult for me," he shook his head. "That day, I rescued you from the heavenly prison and saved the lives of you and your child. Up until now you haven't repaid me. Now you come to talk terms with me. Do you really think that I have the heart of a Buddha?" Whether she lived or died, it was all up to him. If she thought that she could play with him in the palm of her hand, then she was gravely mistaken. Looking into Lu Hao's mocking eyes, Ji Xingxuan's heart was in turmoil. She knew that he didn't have the slightest bit of affection for her. If she continued to bluff, she would probably end up making a fool of herself. After a moment of hesitation, she lowered her pale neck, pretending to be weak. Does Wang Yi remember that last October, there was a murder case in Taisha Shuyuan? The person who died was the daughter of the Xiajiang family, Xia Jiangying? Lu Hao had a vague impression, but he didn't know why Ji Xingxuan would suddenly bring up such an unrelated matter. Afterwards, the emperor decreed a marriage. The deceased Xia Jiangying's younger sister, Xia Jiangmin, was married to the 9th prince as his Fei. She is now Jing Wang Fei. Lu Hao's eyes flashed. He was interested to continue listening. I was good friends with Xia Jiangying when she was alive. The night before her death, she suggested to switch rooms with me. She slept in my room and told me to go home. When I asked for the reason, she told me that her younger sister, Xia Jiangmin, had a nightmare. She dreamed that a thief had broken into her room. At the time, it was nearing the Diyan examination. Xia Jiangying was full of ambition. She clearly received a warning but didn't care. She didn't want to go back to Xia Zhang's guest house to avoid the disaster. Instead, she wanted to switch rooms with her. She thought that this way they would be safe. Who knew that the heavens would play tricks on people, and in the end she died. Then did you switch rooms with her? Lu Hao asked. Seeing Ji Xingxuan nod, his expression became subtle. Actually, that night the murderer wanted to kill me. But because Xia Jiangying moved to my room, she was the one who died. When Ji Xingxuan said these words, she did not look at Lu Hao's face. Her eyes hid the inherent coldness. When she talked about the death of her close friend, she did not feel guilty. It was because she had experienced too many trials and tribulations that she did not care about life and death. However, she cherished her life because she had lost almost everything. If she lost her life, she would not be willing. She wanted to live and see what would happen to her enemies in the future. How did you know that the murderer originally wanted to kill you? Lu Hao caught the key point. Ji Xingxuan looked up at him. Because I knew earlier than Xia Jiangying that someone wanted to kill me. I agreed to exchange rooms with her to save my life. Lu Hao was puzzled. You knew? Ji Xingxuan nodded and looked into his eyes. Her voice was low and solemn, unlike her previous understatement. I have a teacher who has the ability to decide death, she said. Lu Hao was stunned for a moment. Then surprise appeared on his face. His thoughts turned quickly. He asked, Your master? Is he the old immortal who taught you Lianfang the death judgment? It was no wonder that he thought of Yushu. Yushu was famous in the capital. When the death judgment was mentioned, the first person that people would think of was Messenger Miaoling. Moreover, he remembered that Ji Xingxuan said that she had a master in Yang. It was the immortal who taught Yushu the 6 lines technique. No. Ji Xingxuan denied Lu Hao's guess. My master is someone else. Oh. Lu Hao was impatient. If there really was such an expert, he would have to recruit him to Ning Wangfu. Ji Xingxuan saw through his thoughts. Her eyes flashed with mockery. She didn't answer Lu Hao's question. Instead, she looked far away and looked behind him. She told him a story that no one knew about. In the 9th year of Zhaoqing, I was 12. My grandfather was promoted to the right judge of the Celestial Commissioner and took me to Jing. The Ji family was one of the most prestigious families in Yang City. Once they entered Jing, they were not worth mentioning. There were 12 prestigious families in Anling City and countless descendants. Ji Xingxuan was young and not famous. Ji Huaishan took her to all the families. In private, she did not receive kindness and friendliness, but scorn and isolation. Because she was born with an apparition and had a valuable life, her grandfather had high hopes for her. He arranged for her to attend the Great Yen examination the next year to fight for a place in the Taisha library for her. In the 10th year of Zhaoqing, she passed the astrology exam and became a E-master. That year she was only 13. Everyone around her praised her and said that Ji Huaishan had a successor. She had become talented at a young age and was naturally proud. She had finally entered the Taisha library, but reality had given her a loud slap in the face. She was far from being the most outstanding. There were many more talented and intelligent than her. There were many who had a better background and were smarter than her. She became an unremarkable female student. She was not willing to be mediocre, but there was nothing she could do. The Ji family had only been a prestigious family for 3 generations. Compared to those families that had been established for hundreds of years, it was not enough. Without the rare family teachings, without the guidance of a respected elder, she could only be ordinary. Now that she thought about it, she did not know whether it was a blessing or a misfortune. That day she walked into a e-shop on Chenyuan Street and met her future e-master. He was an elder of mysterious origin who made her respect and fear him. He enlightened her, taught her strange skills, and told her about the complicated relationship between the prestigious families in the capital. He made her stand out in the Taisher library, where there were hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Gradually she became friends with princesses and princes, and finally broke away from the ordinary. Every time I meet my e-master, he always covers his face. Otherwise, there will be a curtain covering his face, making it difficult to see his true appearance. I still do not know his name, so your highness does not need to pursue it. If he does not want to show himself, you will not be able to find him. Lu Hao was already moved. How could he give up on the idea just because of a few words from her? He no longer wanted to investigate the master who was proficient in the art of death, so he asked her in a roundabout way, "So, on the day of the murder in the Taisher library, it was he who told you that someone wanted to kill you? That was why you deliberately exchanged rooms with Xia Jiangying and let her die in your place?" His words were straightforward and sharp, but Ji Xingxuan was not moved. She calmly told him another secret. There is Wenqin in the north and Xia Jiang in the south. The Wenqin family is famous for the art of word prediction, and the Xia Jiang family has the ability to interpret dreams. I have heard from Xia Jiangying that her sister, Xia Jiangmin, is gifted and often dreams of people's deaths. Because most of the people in her dreams are strangers, it is useless. A few days before the murder, she specially came to warn Xia Jiangying not to spend the night in the Taisher library. Xia Jiangying listened to her and then proposed to exchange rooms with me. She chose to die in my place. This is her fate. She was destined to die. I was just going with the flow. How could I have done it intentionally? After listening to her explanation, Lu Hao smiled coldly and said, "Why did you have to completely cover yourself? Since you knew that there was a disaster, you could have stopped her from taking the risk. However, you stayed out of it. It was clearly a scheme. Someone wanted to kill you. If you did not succeed that night, there would be a next time." However, Xia Jiangying died and the matter was blown up. The Supreme Court was involved in this murder. In order not to expose themselves, the murderer did not dare to do anything to you again. You escaped and escaped from danger. It was a brilliant move that killed two birds with one stone, wasn't it? At this point, he had already seen through this little girl's heart of stone. You can say whatever you want. Ji Xingxuan spoke in a low voice. She lowered her head again. Xia Jiangying's tragic death. Whether or not she felt any guilt, only she knew. The secret you want to tell me, is that all? Lu Hao slowly shook his head. This is not enough for me to agree to your conditions. Ji Xingxuan's head was still lowered, but her eyelids moved. She looked at Lu Hao with a strange gaze. She gave a strange laugh. This is just a preamble. The real secret I want to tell Wang Yi, I have not said it. Hearing this, Lu Hao's mind shook. He couldn't help sitting up straight. He heard her say, "Why does Wang Yi think that I have fallen to such a state?" Her family had been destroyed. Her future and reputation had been ruined. She had lost her innocence. She had barely managed to keep her life, but she had become a fish on someone's chopping block. She had been imprisoned in this deep courtyard, unable to see the light of day. Lu Hao frowned. He pointed out bluntly, "If you hadn't provoked that Yu Lianfeng, not only did you fail to harm her, but you were also plotted against by her. Perhaps you would still be a glorious, hideous Grade-E master." As he said this, he couldn't help but feel angry. He had once tried every possible way to obtain this woman in front of him. Who knew that today she had given birth to someone else's vile spawn? Ji Xingxuan didn't know what Lu Hao was thinking, but she could hear the ridicule in his words. He was saying that she had overestimated her abilities and provoked Yu Shu, resulting in her current sorry state. Her face couldn't help but turn cold. She silently told herself not to argue with him. After a moment of silence, she opened her mouth again. "If I hadn't listened to Shifu's orders and failed to do my job properly, how could I have been caught and ended up like this?" "What do you mean?" "In the 4th month of this year, there was another murder case in Taisher Library. The daughter of the Chao family was hanged to death on the stargazing platform. On the eve of the murder, it was indeed me who used the name of the Taoist to lure Chao Yuling to the stargazing platform at night." Ji Xingxuan coldly confessed her crime. She had imitated Jing Chen's handwriting and placed the note in Chao Yuling's book. She knew that Chao Yuling admired Jing Chen and would definitely keep the appointment. Who knew that she hadn't been discreet enough and had been witnessed by Qin Yuero? Later, 9th Prince Lu Tan held a banquet in Shenchun Garden. Qin Yuero and Xen Lu confronted each other by the lake. Xen Lu eavesdropped on them and chased them to the balcony. She argued with Xen Lu and accidentally pushed her down the stairs. Just as she was about to kill Xen Lu, Yushu arrived and saved Xen Lu. The two of them accused her of killing Xen Lu, causing her to be thrown into prison once again. So you're saying that you were incited by your Shifu to harm the young lady of the Chao family. That's why in prison, you'd rather be tortured than confess to him. Is that right? Lu Hao thought that this woman's natural disposition was cold, but she was dead set on her Shifu. It's not that I didn't want to, it's that I couldn't. Only by clenching my teeth would I have a chance at survival. If I told you, only death awaited me. Ji Xingxuan seemed to have thought of something. Lu Hao saw her shoulders tremble as if she was shivering. Why did your Shifu want to kill the young lady of the Chao family? Was it just to frame Jing Qin? He couldn't understand why Ji Xingxuan's Shifu would be involved with Jing Qin. Perhaps. Ji Xingxuan was a bit absent-minded. Her thoughts were stuck on what had happened just now. Lu Hao snorted in dissatisfaction. This caused her to return to her senses. She raised her eyes to look at him and licked her dry lips. She had used up all of her strength in childbirth. If she hadn't drunk a bowl of ginseng soup, she wouldn't have had the energy to deal with him. How does Prince think our Daan's crown prince has been chosen? Lu Hao didn't have enough patience. His heart was still full of questions, but he was stopped by her question. His ambition for the throne wasn't just 1 or 2 days ago. He had a deep thought in his mind. He opened his mouth and said, "Those who are capable will take the throne." Who knew that when Ji Xingxuan heard his words she actually laughed. She didn't wait for him to get angry and said, "I'll tell Prince a secret now. Come closer, I'll whisper it to you." Although Lu Hao was guarded against her, he wasn't afraid of a weak woman. He hesitated for a moment before he got up and walked forward. He didn't sit on the bed. Instead, he stood at the head of her bed and bent down. Then he heard her weak breathing. She said, "The Celestial Commissioner of the past generations has given advice. He has one of the 6 tools for the founding of the country, the Book of Mystery Maiden. Who will be the next emperor?" Chapter 7:15. In the evening, Lu Hao walked out of the wall covered in red silk grass. Eunuch Zheng walked in front with his back bent, holding a lantern to lead the way. The yellow light from the lantern illuminated his hazy face. He walked aimlessly in the corridor, his mind filled with the things he had just pried out of Ji Xingxuan's mouth. The secret she had used to negotiate terms with him sounded absurd and nonsensical. The person who would inherit the throne in the future was not decided by the emperor, but according to something called Xian Nu Lu Ren Book. Lu Hao would rather believe that Ji Xingxuan had told him a big lie to save her life. But after he calmed down and thought about it, he actually felt that her words were somewhat believable. From afar, the successive heirs were not all the legitimate sons of the empress. For example, before his father, Emperor Zhao Qing, entered the Eastern Palace, the former Empress Dowager was just one of the many concubines of the previous emperor. Because she had 2 sons and a daughter, she was given the title of Xian Fei. Lu Hao knew a little about the grievances of the previous generation. Of his imperial uncles who had either died of illness or been exiled far away, there were many who were more capable than his father, but the throne had fallen onto his father's head. This was thought-provoking. Looking closely, Fu Huang was middle-aged and his health was deteriorating. The empress did not have an heir, but he was still unwilling to choose a successor from the group of princes. Even when the imperial study was filled with memorials for the position of crown prince, he was not moved. What was he waiting for? Ji Xingxuan was vague and only said that the Xian Nu Lu Ren Book would show who the next emperor would be. But she could not explain why, so this left room for Lu Hao's imagination. If what she said was true, then the reason why Father Emperor was hesitant to make a decision was because the successor in the Book of Mystery Maiden Lu Ren was different from what he had in mind. Or was it because something else had happened that caused them to not be sure of the successor? Lu Hao felt that Ji Xingxuan did not have the guts to lie to him about this kind of matter because she was afraid of death. So she had some reservations and did not tell him everything, such as who the father of the child was. For example, her mysterious master. But it didn't matter. She wanted to turn over a new leaf and wanted to keep her child. These were enough for him to crush her pulse. Lu Hao thought. He was going to let her live as well as that vile spawn, until the mother and son no longer had any value in living. Walking past the darkest corner of Ning Wang Fu, the front was brightly lit. Without realizing it, Lu Hao came to Ning Wang Fei's yard. Seeing the young woman hurrying out to welcome him, his gaze passed over her delicate features. He gave a smile and reached out to help her up. "Have you had your dinner? Would you like to join me?" he asked in a pleasant tone. It was rare for Ning Wangfei to receive a smile from him. She was overwhelmed by the favor and entered the room hand in hand with him. But very quickly she knew that Ning Wang's expression was good. It wasn't for free. After this meal, Ning Wangfu would have a concubine called Ru Wei, and the son she bore for Ning Wang. Celestial Commissioner. Early in the morning at Tai Shi Tower, Jing Qin came looking for him. The Great Commissioner was holding a cup of morning tea as he listened to his request. He was very surprised. "You want to see that suspect?" Jing Qin nodded. "Even though I dreamed that that person was related to me being plotted against, but I don't remember the entire process. I want to see him and maybe I can remember more details. If it is convenient when you interrogate him, I want to sit in." His reason was impeccable. The Great Commissioner didn't refuse. He thought and agreed. "You can go back first, come back after 5. The suspect was locked up in a secret place. During the day there were many eyes in the Celestial Commissioner. It wasn't convenient for him to take Jing Qin out, so he had to wait until after sunset. It was still early. When Jing Qin left Tai Shi Tower, he went back to Kunling Bureau and gave Yu Shu an answer. "The Great Commissioner agreed to take me there tonight." Yu Shu was slightly reassured and thanked him. "It's all thanks to you being willing to help. I'll tell you after I see that person." Jing Qin stayed at Kunling Bureau for the whole morning. He pretended to be in front of outsiders so that they wouldn't think that he came specially to see Yu Shu. After he left, Yu Shu absent-mindedly read the latest official marriage documents. When Xiao and went to Taisher Library to report. The room was unusually quiet with one less person. She stayed up the whole afternoon. When it was time, she packed her things and left with the guards. She didn't expect that there was someone waiting outside the Celestial Commissioner's door. "Lotus Room." Someone shouted. Yu Shu turned around and saw a person leading a tall horse towards her. The person took off the bamboo hat covering her face and revealed a bright and beautiful face. It was Jiang Mia. This was the first time the two met after Duchess Wei's birthday banquet. Yu Shu was angry because Jiang Mia had listed her as part of Princess Dongjing's backup army without saying anything. Now, she silently watched as the person walked in front of her. Lu Hong and Su Qing recognized this Princess Chunwei of Duke Dongjing's residence. Seeing that Yu Shu didn't say anything, they lowered their heads. Although they didn't bow, they didn't lose their respect. "I waited for you for a long time." Jiang Mia started complaining. If there was no concubine selection, Yu Shu would definitely welcome her with a smile and tease her. But now she just wanted to know why she came looking for her. "Princess, why are you looking for me?" Jiang Mia heard her unfamiliar and polite way of addressing her. She raised her thick eyebrows and said, "Are you complaining about me?" After the banquet at Duke Dongjing's residence, Shui Rui found her and told her not to have any ideas about Yu Shu. Because of this, the two of them had a falling out. Jiang Mia was already in a bad mood. Now that she saw Yu Shu's attitude towards her, she became even more unhappy. "Princess, what did you do to make me complain about you?" Yu Shu countered with a question. She turned around and walked to the other side with the two guards. She didn't ride a horse today and the palanquin was parked at the corner of the street. Jiang Mia gritted her teeth and pulled the reins to follow. "I won't talk about the past. Let me ask you, where did Shui Dalong go? Do you know that something happened to his residence?" Yu Shu turned around and looked at her. She thought that Jiang Mia had heard that the Yulin royal guards went to the Shui family to capture someone. Since they couldn't find Shui Rui, they came to find her to ask for him. Presumably, the news of Shui Rui's disappearance hadn't reached the Supreme Court yet. "Are you talking about the Shui family servant being captured?" "I also heard about it." "Yes." Jiang Mia answered impatiently. She asked again, "Since you know, why don't you tell me where he went?" Yu Shu said unhurriedly, "Why are you so flustered? The one who was captured is his family's servant. What's the big deal?" Jiang Mia snorted coldly and looked at her. "What do you know? The one who was captured is a chief steward of the Shui family. He is a wanted criminal on the imperial list. I don't know what heinous crime that bastard committed. I'm afraid that his whole family will be involved." Then she frowned again. "I'm too lazy to talk to you. Quickly tell me, do you know where Shui Dalong is?" "I don't know." Yu Shu shrugged. When Jiang Mia heard this, she fiercely glared at her. Then she turned around and mounted her horse, galloping away. Yu Shu looked in the direction that Jiang Mia left and slowly frowned. She didn't tell Jiang Mia that he went to Fenghua Palace to investigate. It wasn't out of selfishness, but because she was worried that Jiang Mia would impulsively go to Fenghua Palace to find him. This matter was already chaotic enough. If someone from the Prince of Dongjing got involved, it would only add fuel to the fire. She pinched the space between her brows and sighed. "Big brother, where are you now?" Chapter 7:16. I want you to help me change my appearance and move out of this ghastly place. Let me become your Shirche and together with my child, appear openly in front of people. Lu Hao wasn't very surprised that Ji Xingxuan had made such a request. You still make it difficult for me, he shook his head. That day I rescued you from the heavenly prison and saved the lives of you and your child. You still haven't repaid me and now you're talking terms with me. Do you really think that I have the heart of a Buddha? Whether she lived or died, it was all up to him. If she thought that she could toy with him in the palm of her hand, then she was gravely mistaken. Looking into Lu Hao's mocking eyes, Ji Xingxuan's heart was in turmoil. She knew that he didn't have the slightest bit of affection for her. If she continued to bluff, she might end up making a fool of herself. After a moment of hesitation, she lowered her pale neck to show her weakness. Does Wang Yi remember that last October, there was a murder case in Taisha Shuyuan? The person who died was the daughter of the Xiajiang family, Xia Jiangyin? Lu Hao had a vague impression, but he didn't know why Ji Xingxuan would suddenly bring up such an unrelated matter. Afterwards, the emperor decreed a marriage. The deceased Xia Jiangying's younger sister, Xia Jiangmin, was married to the 9th prince as his fei. She is now Jing Wang Fei. Lu Hao's eyes flashed. He was interested to continue listening. I was good friends with Xia Jiangying when she was alive. The night before her death, she suggested to switch rooms with me. She slept in my room and told me to go home. When I asked for the reason, she told me that her younger sister, Xia Jiangmin, had a nightmare. She dreamed that a thief had broken into her room. At the time, when the Diyuan examination was approaching, Xia Jiangying was full of ambition. She clearly received a warning but didn't care. She didn't want to go back to Xia Zhang's guest house to avoid the disaster. Instead, she wanted to switch rooms with her. She thought that this way they would be safe. Who knew that the heavens would play tricks on people and she died a violent death? Then did you switch rooms with her? Lu Hao asked. Seeing Ji Xingxuan nod, his expression became subtle. Actually, that night the murderer wanted to kill me. But because Xia Jiangying moved to my room, she was the one who died. When Ji Xingxuan said these words, she did not look at Lu Hao's face. Her eyes hid the inherent coldness. When she talked about the death of her close friend, she did not feel guilty. It was because she had experienced too many trials and tribulations that she did not care about life and death. However, she cherished her life because she had lost almost everything. If she lost her life, she would not be willing. She wanted to live and see what would happen to her enemies in the future. How did you know that the murderer originally wanted to kill you? Lu Hao caught the key point. Ji Xingxuan looked up at him. Because I knew earlier than Xia Jiangying that someone wanted to kill me. I agreed to exchange rooms with her to save my life. Lu Hao was puzzled. You knew? Ji Xingxuan nodded and looked into his eyes. Her voice was low and solemn, unlike her previous understatement. I have a teacher who has the ability to decide death, she said. Lu Hao was stunned for a moment. Then surprise appeared on his face. His train of thought changed and he asked, Your master? Is he the old immortal who taught you Lianfang the death judgment? It was no wonder that he would think of Yushu. Yushu was famous in the capital. When the death judgment was mentioned, the first person that people would think of was Messenger Miaoling. Moreover, he remembered that Ji Xingxuan said that she had a master when she was in Yang. It was the immortal who taught Yushu the 6 lines technique. No, Ji Xingxuan denied Lu Hao's guess. My master is someone else. Oh. Lu Hao was slightly impatient. If there really was such an expert, he had to recruit him to Ning Wangfu. Ji Xingxuan saw through his thoughts. Her eyes flashed with mockery. She didn't answer Lu Hao's question. Instead, she looked far away and looked behind him. She told him a story that no one knew about. In the 9th year of Zhaoqing, I was 12. My grandfather was promoted to the right judge of the Celestial Commissioner and took me to Jing. The Ji family was one of the top aristocratic families in Yang City. Once they entered Jing, they were not worth mentioning. There were 12 prestigious families in Anling City and countless children. Ji Xingxuan was young and not famous. Ji Huaishan took her to various houses. What she received in private was not kindness and friendliness, but contempt and isolation. Because she was born with an apparition, her fate was precious. Her grandfather had high hopes for her and arranged for her to participate in the Great Yen examination the following year in order to fight for a place in the Taisha library for her. In the 10th year of Zhaoqing, she passed the astrology exam in the Great Yin examination and became a Yi master. That year she was only 13. Everyone around her praised her and said that Ji Huaishan had a successor. She had become talented at a young age and was naturally proud. She had finally entered the Taisha library, but reality had given her a loud slap in the face. She was far from being the most outstanding one. There were many more talented and intelligent than her. There were many who had a better background and were smarter than her. She became an unremarkable female student. She was not willing to be mediocre, but there was nothing she could do. The Ji family had only been a prestigious family for 3 generations. Compared to those prestigious families that had been established for hundreds of years, it was not enough. Without the rare family teachings, without the guidance of a respected elder, she could only be ordinary. Now that she thought about it, she did not know whether it was a blessing or a misfortune. That day she walked into a Yi shop on Qianyuan Street and met her future Yi master. He was an elder of mysterious origin who made her respect and fear him. He enlightened her, taught her strange skills, and told her about the complicated relationship between the prestigious families in the capital. He made her stand out in the Taisha library, where there were hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Gradually, she became friends with princesses and princes and finally broke away from the ordinary. Every time I meet my Yi master, he always covers his face. Otherwise, there will be a curtain covering his face and it will be difficult to see his true appearance. I still do not know his name, so your highness does not need to pursue it. If he does not want to show himself, you will not be able to find him. Lu Hao was already moved. How could he give up the idea just because of a few words from her? He no longer wanted to investigate the master who knew the death sentence technique. So he asked her in a roundabout way, "So, on the day of the murder in the Taisha library, it was he who told you that someone wanted to kill you. That was why you deliberately exchanged rooms with Xia Jiangying and let her die in your place?" His words were straightforward and sharp, but Ji Xingxuan was not moved. She calmly told him another secret. There is Wen Qin in the north and Xia Jiang in the south. Wen Qin's family is famous for their word prediction technique, and Xia Jiang's family has the ability to interpret dreams. I have heard from Xia Jiangying that her sister, Xia Jiangmin, is gifted and often dreams of people's deaths. Because most of the people in her dreams are strangers, it is useless. A few days before the murder, she specially came to warn Xia Jiangying not to spend the night in the Taisha library. Xia Jiangying listened to her and then proposed to exchange rooms with me. She chose to die in my place. This is her fate. She was destined to die. I was just going with the flow. How could I have done it intentionally? After listening to her explanation, Lu Hao smiled coldly and said, "Why did you have to completely cover yourself? Since you knew that there was a disaster, you could have stopped her from taking the risk. However, you stayed out of it. It was clearly a scheme. Someone wanted to kill you. If you did not succeed that night, there would be a next time." However, Xia Jiangying died and the matter was blown up. The Supreme Court was involved in this murder. In order not to expose themselves, the murderer did not dare to attack you again. You escaped and escaped from danger. It was a clever move that killed 2 birds with 1 stone, wasn't it? At this point, he had already seen through this little girl's heart of stone. You can say whatever you want. Ji Xingxuan spoke in a low voice. She lowered her head again. Xia Jiangying's tragic death. Whether or not she felt any guilt, only she knew. The secret you want to tell me, is that all? Lu Hao slowly shook his head. This is not enough for me to agree to your conditions. Ji Xingxuan's head was still lowered, but her eyelids moved. She looked at Lu Hao with a strange gaze. She gave a strange laugh. This is just a preamble. The real secret I want to tell Wang Yi, I have not said it. Hearing this, Lu Hao's mind shook. He couldn't help sitting up straight. He heard her say, "Why does Wang Yi think that I have fallen to such a state?" Her family had been destroyed. Her future and reputation had been ruined. She had lost her innocence. She had barely managed to keep her life, but she had become a fish on someone's chopping block. She had been imprisoned in this deep courtyard, unable to see the light of day. Lu Hao frowned. He pointed out bluntly, "If you hadn't provoked that Yu Lianfeng, not only did you fail to harm her, but you were also plotted against by her. Perhaps you would still be a glorious, hideous Grade-E master." As he said this, he couldn't help but feel angry. He had once tried every possible way to obtain this woman in front of him. Who knew that today she had given birth to someone else's vile spawn? Ji Xingxuan did not know what Lu Hao was thinking, but hearing the ridicule in his words, saying that she had overestimated her abilities and provoked Yu Shu, resulting in her current sorry state, her face couldn't help but turn cold. She silently told herself not to argue with him. After a moment of silence, she spoke again. If I hadn't listened to Shifu's orders and failed to do my job properly, how could I have been caught and ended up like this? What do you mean? In the 4th month of this year, there was another murder case in Taisher Library. The daughter of the Chow family was hanged to death on the stargazing platform. On the eve of the murder, it was indeed me who used the name of the Taoist to lure Chow Yuling to the stargazing platform at night. Ji Xingxuan coldly confessed her crime. She had imitated Jing Chen's handwriting and placed the note in Chow Yuling's book. She knew that Chow Yuling admired Jing Chen and would definitely keep the appointment. Who knew that she hadn't been discreet enough and had been witnessed by Qin Yuero? Later, when 9th Prince Lu Tan held a banquet in Shenchun Garden, Qin Yuero confronted her by the lake. Xen Lu eavesdropped on them and chased them to the balcony. Qin Yuero and Qin Yuero got into an argument and accidentally pushed her down the stairs. Just as they were about to kill each other, Yu Shu arrived and saved Xen Lu. The two of them accused her of murdering Qin Yuero, causing her to be thrown into prison once again. So you're saying that you were incited by your Shifu to harm the young lady of the Chow family. That's why in prison you would rather be tortured than confess to him. Is that right? Lu Hao thought that this woman was cold by nature, but she was dead set on her Shifu. It's not that I didn't want to, it's that I couldn't. Only by clenching my teeth would I have a chance at survival. If I told you, only death awaited me. It was unknown what Ji Xingxuan was thinking, but Lu Hao saw her shoulders tremble as if she was shivering. Why did your Shifu want to kill the young lady of the Chow family? Was it just to frame Jing Chen? He couldn't understand why Ji Xingxuan's Shifu would be involved with Jing Chen. Perhaps. Ji Xingxuan was absent-minded. Her thoughts were stuck on what happened just now. Lu Hao snorted in dissatisfaction. This caused her to return to her senses. She raised her eyes to look at him and licked her dry lips. Previously, giving birth had consumed all of her strength. If she didn't drink a bowl of ginseng soup, she wouldn't have the energy to deal with him. How does Wang Ye think our Daan's crown prince is chosen? Lu Hao didn't have enough patience. His heart was still full of questions, but he was stopped by her question. His ambition for the throne wasn't just 1 or 2 days ago. He had a deep thought in his mind. He opened his mouth and said, "Those who are capable will take the throne." Who knew that when Ji Xingxuan heard his words she actually laughed? Without waiting for him to get angry she said, "I'll tell Wang Ye a secret now. Come closer, I'll whisper it to you." Although Lu Hao was on guard against her, he wasn't afraid of a weak woman. He hesitated for a moment, then got up and walked forward. He didn't sit on the bed. Instead, he stood at the head of her bed and bent down. Then he heard her weak breath. She said, "The celestial commissioner of the past dynasties has given advice. He has one of the 6 tools for the founding of the country, the Book of Mystery Maiden. Who will be the next emperor?" Chapter 717. The news of Shui Rui's disappearance in Fenghua Fu first spread to the judicial office and then to the ears of some people. Some people were worried and some people rejoiced in other people's misfortune. In just a short span of 2 to 3 days, it had attracted a lot of speculation. Thinking of the imperial court's wanted criminal on the imperial bulletin, it directly pushed the Shui family to the heart of the struggle. The fastest rumor that spread privately was that the Shui family had committed a major crime and knew that things were bad, so they let Shui Rui escape first to protect this branch of the family. When Yu Shu heard these rumors, she thought that it was someone who was creating trouble, who didn't want the Shui family to have an easy time and wanted to fish in troubled waters. It was obvious that Ning Wang would not let go of this good opportunity to hit them when they were down. That afternoon, when Yu Shu was resting at Kunlingju, someone came to visit and handed over an invitation. It was Prince Jing Lu Tan, inviting her to meet at Wang Ji Lu tonight. Yu Shu agreed. When she finished her work that day, she returned to the Fu to change her clothes and hurried to Wang Ji Lu. When she arrived there, Lu Tan was not the only one who was waiting for her. Lu Jiong, Feng Zhaomiao, Qi Mingxiu, Rui Lin, these few young masters who usually addressed Shui Rui as brothers were all here. As soon as she entered the door, they all stood up in unison. A room full of men, staring at a young girl like a tiger watching its prey. It was fortunate that Yu Shu wasn't an ordinary young girl, otherwise she would have been scared out of her wits. "Lianfang, do you know where Rui Ji has gone?" Feng Zhaomiao was the most anxious and asked before Lu Tan could open his mouth. Yu Shu looked around at the people and saw that they all had worried expressions. She muttered to herself before saying, "About 7 days ago the imperial bulletin was posted in Jing. I knew that a steward of the Shui family was captured and sent to the judicial office, so I went to the yamen to find him. When I got there, I heard that my eldest brother had gone to Fenghuafu to handle a case. In the end, early this morning, I heard the news that he had gone missing. Feng Xiaomiao gave an ah in disappointment. So you don't know either. He believed Yu Shu's words, but some people didn't. Miss Lotus Room, since you know something happened to the Shui family, you must know how serious the situation is. We are not outsiders. We are all here to help. I hope you can tell us the truth. Do you really not know where Brother Rue is? The person who questioned him was the heir of the Zhongyong Count Rue Lin. It seemed that they were worried for Shui Rue, but Yu Shu could tell that they did not believe that Shui Rue would disappear for no reason. They probably thought that he had escaped. Yu Shu was not convinced by his words. She shook her head and said, I really don't know. It's not that I don't want to tell you. As she spoke, she looked at Lu Tan. In this room, his status was the most important. His words had the most weight. Before she came, she thought that Lu Tan was looking for her to inquire about the disappearance of Shui Rue. But when she saw the people he brought, she felt that it was not the case. Lu Tan met Yu Shu's eyes and paused for a moment. Then he asked, Did you meet cousin before he left the capital? He left in a hurry and didn't say goodbye to me. Hearing her words, everyone frowned at the same time. Feng Xiaomiao couldn't calm down and muttered anxiously, What should we do now? I don't know where Brother Rue is. The rumors outside seem to be true. It's hard to explain. As long as he doesn't come back, the rumors will become more and more intense. Sooner or later, it will reach the ears of the emperor. Yu Shu heard every word. She only felt that in this room of people, there was only one person who was really worried about Shui Rue. The only person who was really worried about Shui Rue and didn't consider her own safety was Feng Xiaomiao. One couldn't blame her for having a vile heart. The Shui family was Lu Tan's maternal family. Once the building was in danger, Lu Tan's first worry was his own future. Lu Jiong was the heir of Xiang Wangfu. His mother, Xiang Wangfei, was the same as noble consort Shui. She was Shui Rue's biological aunt. If something happened to the Shui family, they would be affected more or less. Ruilin and Qimingxiu were left. One was from the empress's maternal family, and the other was from an unrelated grand secretary's mansion. They were probably here to inquire about the news. Yu Shu had always been very vigilant. She refused to let them get information from her. Instead, she asked Lu Tan. The Shui family was taken to the Supreme Court for many days. Did Wang Ye find out why? Lu Tan sighed. I sent someone to the Supreme Court on the day of the incident. But the news was too tight. I only heard that the criminal was taken away the next day. Imperial Father ordered a private trial and no one was allowed to interfere. Yu Shu was very clear in her heart, but she pretended to be ignorant. I heard a rumor that the criminal taken away from the Shui family was involved in a case of rebellion. Lu Jiong, Feng Xiaomiao and the others' faces changed. They heard Lu Tan snorted coldly. What case of rebellion? It's just someone spreading rumors. The Shui family has been loyal for generations. Why would they seek death for no reason? Yu Shu saw that he was angry and said awkwardly, It's my slip of the tongue. Please forgive me, Wang Ye. Lu Tan didn't want to vent his anger on her. Seeing that she couldn't help, he politely asked her to leave. After Yu Shu left, Feng Xiaomiao and the others immediately gathered around and discussed with Lu Tan what to do next. No matter what they thought in their hearts, they were Shui Rue's good brothers on the surface. How could they just stand by and watch? Yu Shu came down from the second floor. As soon as she reached the corridor, shopkeeper Lin, who was standing under the Chuehua gate in the backyard, ran up to her. Mississippi, Yu Shu looked up at the upstairs and retreated to the staircase to talk with him. This lowly one just heard that young master disappeared. What should we do? This lowly one's knowledge is limited. Can you give me some ideas? Lin Fu and the servants of Wang Jilu were Shui Rue's subordinates. They didn't have much relationship with the Shui family. So, in their eyes, the big disaster of a wanted criminal in the Shui family was not as scary as the disappearance of Shui Rue. What are you panicking about? Big brother disappeared. Someone will go and find him. Even if you panic, you can't help. Don't worry. I have already divined his safety. No one will harm him. Yu Shu patted his shoulder and said in a relaxed tone, Tell everyone to do what you should do. If something happens, I will be there. Ah yes, Lin Fu agreed. Although he was nervous, his trust in Yu Shu gave him a backbone again. Are you going back now? This lowly one asked the kitchen to pack some fresh food for you to take away. Please wait. Lin Fu's body was fat, but his footsteps were like the wind. He ran into the kitchen and came out with a three-tiered lunchbox. It was only a short while, but in that short while, someone chased after him from upstairs. "Miss you." Second young Master Qi had a refined appearance and was gentle and polite. Yushu couldn't think of what he wanted to say to her in private. "Is there anything else?" Qi Mingxiu was embarrassed for a moment. He lowered his head and asked softly, "Have you seen Miss Situ recently?" Yushu was a little slow to realize that the Miss Situ he mentioned was Situ Qinglan. She vaguely remembered that Qi Mingxiu and Situ Qinglan met at the Hibiscus Gentlemen's Banquet a few months ago. "I saw her at Taisha Shuyuan a few days ago." She observed Qi Mingxiu's expression and more or less guessed something. "Is she all right?" Yushu didn't know how to answer. She shook her head and asked, "If young Master Qi has something to say, why don't you go to Taisha Shuyuan and ask her yourself?" It was better to openly interact like this than to sneak around and ask around. Qi Mingxiu's eyes darkened, and a bitter smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. If he could see Situ Qinglan, why would he bother to ask Yushu? Every time he found a chance to go to Taisha Shuyuan to look for her, she would intentionally or unintentionally avoid him, so he couldn't figure out her thoughts and whether she was the same as him. Yushu saw that he was silent, and she understood that she shouldn't ask about it. She turned around and saw Lin Fu coming out with a 3-layer high food box. She hurriedly said goodbye to him. "I'll go first. See you another day." Qi Mingxiu didn't stop her. After she left, he stood alone at the stairs for a while and then went upstairs. Lin Fu sent Yushu to the side of the sedan. Before she left, she didn't forget to tell him, "Take good care of the masters behind. Provide them with good food and drinks. If anything happens, send someone to Baochang Street to find me." It was not difficult to guess what Lu Tan was planning. It was nothing more than taking the opportunity of Shui Rui's accident to win over the people around Shui Rui. Lu Tan didn't think that the Shui family would be involved in the rebellion, and he didn't know that a disaster was coming. So he didn't forget to make his own calculations at this critical moment. It was not the first time that she noticed that Lu Tan had a tendency to be heartless. But this time she was bitterly disappointed. For example, when she found out that Shui Rui had gone missing, her first reaction was that she was afraid that he had been killed. However, what Lu Tan was worried about was obviously the negative effects brought about by Shui Rui's disappearance. Yushu didn't comment on what was wrong with Lu Tan's attitude. But she hesitated when she thought that she had to help such a person fight for the throne and help him ascend to the throne. P.S. Chapter 7:18. Half a month after the incident on the imperial list, Emperor Zhaoqing left a group of close officials behind and moved to the Hall of Peace to discuss politics. The main topic was to discuss the attack on Wei Nation. When it was almost noon, the palace servants waiting outside the hall suddenly heard a crisp sound coming from the inner cabinet. It was the sound of porcelain shattering. To be able to smash things inside, one could imagine who it was. One by one, the palace servants lowered their heads even lower, afraid that the emperor would lose his temper and vent his anger on them. Not long after, Prime Minister Yin and the great Tiao Dian came out one after the other, followed by a few loyal officials, exchanged glances outside the hall, one after another left in silence. Seeing that it was mealtime, the little eunuch of the catering department looked around and finally saw Eunuch Ying, the chief steward, coming out of the hall. Seeing him, he waved his hand and hurried to greet him with a smile. "Grandpa Ying, has His Majesty served the meal?" Ying Jiuping glanced at him and said in a low voice, "Go back and tell Eunuch's son to prepare a few appetizers. Don't touch anything that might cause heat." The little eunuch was clever and knew that Emperor Zhaoqing was in a bad mood. He couldn't help but look into the Hall of Peace and vaguely saw a figure kneeling by the door. The figure was dressed in red and purple court clothes, indicating that this person was of high status and power. Before he could take a second look, Ying Jiuping saw him and slammed his finger on his forehead, scolding in a low voice, "What are you looking at? Do you want to die? Get out of here." After driving the bold little thing away, Ying Jiuping turned his head and sighed. Looking at the scene in the hall, he resigned to his fate and walked back. Shui Lingnan had angered the emperor in the imperial study. Emperor Zhaoqing had smashed a cup and punished him to kneel for an hour. This matter had spread to the back palace before dark. Although women in the back palace were not allowed to interfere in politics, the powerful concubines had spies in the court in order to fight for favor. When the news reached Yongla Palace, concubine Yin Shu heard it and smiled. She rewarded the little eunuch with 2 golden leaves on the spot and then left, leaving only her wet nurse Nanny Chio to talk. "Let's see how long that bitch can be arrogant." Needless to say, the bitch in concubine Shu's words was referring to the pregnant noble consort Shui. Nanny Chiu said with a smile, "The good days of Zhongzue Palace are coming to an end." Looking at the situation, Prime Minister Shui's country was really at the end of its days. "We just caught a wanted criminal of the imperial court, but that young Master Shui mysteriously disappeared without a trace. His Majesty is wise and wise. No matter how much he dotes on the imperial concubine, he will not bring the favor of the harem into the imperial court." As a matter of fact, Prime Minister Shui has been thunderstruck. It is clear that His Majesty wants to punish the Shui family severely and will not let them off. Consort Yin Shu sat on the couch. Playing with a bunch of red leaves in the vase, Zhuang Li's face was filled with a harsh expression that didn't match her appearance. Up until now, no one in the know has leaked the details. What exactly did the Shui family do? If they are suspected of disobedience, that would be for the best. His Majesty will not tolerate a grain of sand in his eyes. Once the Shui family collapses, what does the 9th prince have to compete with Ahang? Prince of Ning Lu Hao's childhood name was Heng. Consort Shu's proudest moment in her life was not being the emperor's concubine, but giving birth to such a promising prince. Emperor Zhaoqing did not lack sons. Not counting those who died of illness or premature deaths, there were still the 4th prince, the 7th prince, the 9th prince, the 11th prince and the 12th prince. The youngest, the 16th prince, was only 4 years old. There were many princes, but the good and the bad were intermingled. For example, the 4th prince and the 11th prince had been exiled due to their mistakes and had long lost hope of inheriting the throne. Among the remaining princes, only the 9th prince, Lu Tan, who was also titled as a prince, had the ability to compete with Lu Hao. Lu Tan's greatest support was the Shui family. Without the Shui family, he would not be a threat. At that time, Lu Hao would definitely be the crown prince of the Eastern Palace. Consort Shu was not good at competing for favor. She was not muddle-headed when it came to the throne. "Nyang, should this servant send someone to Zhongzue Palace to fan the air?" Chiu Mama suggested. Noble consort Shui's pregnancy was unstable. If she heard the slightest movement, it was hard to guarantee that her body wouldn't be frightened. Consort Shu furrowed her brow. She thought and shook her head. "No. The Holy One values this child. If she miscarries, we have to take care of her even more. This has nothing to do with us. We should just sit and watch the show. There is no need to find trouble." Chiu Mama had raised her since she was little. She knew that she was stubborn and didn't urge her to do anything unnecessary. Therefore, after a night passed, there was no movement in Zhongzue Palace that wasn't far from here. But in Rui Empress Wu Perching Palace, there was someone who hadn't slept the entire night waiting to hear the news. At daybreak, the mistress got up and went in to report. Nyang, Zhongzue Palace was uneventful the entire night. Rui Empress sat in front of the gold-plated phoenix mirror that was half the height of a person and was dressing. The immaculate mirror reflected her furrowed brow. This caused the palace maid who was putting on her hair to lighten her movements and be even more careful. Consort Shu has grown an eye. The head Taijian of the imperial kitchen was from Wu Perching Palace. Today the emperor was angry in Calm Peace Hall. She was the first to hear and then leaked it to Changlu Palace. Who would have thought that Consort Shu was able to keep her composure and didn't go and cause trouble for noble Consort Shui? Consort Shu naturally didn't fit Empress Rui's plans. She was jealous that Consort Shu had a promising son and also envied noble Consort Shui's unfailing imperial favor. She wanted the two to fight so she could sit back and reap the benefits. It was a pity that noble Consort Shui was pregnant and the emperor was watching closely. She couldn't openly provoke the two. Then let's wait and see. Something had happened to the Shui family, but Rui Empress wasn't worried. If the 9th prince didn't have the chance to inherit the throne, then there was only Ning Wang left. Ning Wang. Rui Empress murmured, and a cold smile slowly appeared at the corner of her mouth. An imperial son who had plotted to kill his own sister. What virtue did he have to enter the Eastern Palace? The Book of Great Earth for November hadn't been drawn up yet when Yushu received a summons from the palace. Noble Consort Shui wanted to see her. She wasn't surprised, but she wasn't sure how much noble Consort Shui had heard of what was happening outside. On the way into the palace, Yushu pondered what she should say and what she shouldn't say when she saw the person later. It had been over a month since she had last entered the palace. When she saw noble Consort Shui again, she felt different. Calculating, noble Consort Shui had been pregnant for 4 months. In the fall, she wore 2 more layers of clothing so her belly couldn't be seen. But the loose style didn't show the slender waist of a young girl. She hadn't put on any makeup and her skin was still snow-white and translucent. Only the outline of her eyebrows was faintly drawn. It was less beautiful and more delicate. She sat with her knees bent on a carpet filled with green chrysanthemums. When she looked back, she was breathtakingly beautiful. Femme fatale, these words suddenly popped up in Yushu's mind. Sit. Noble consort Shui didn't beat around the bush with Yushu. When they met, she directly asked, Qingbai disappeared, right? With just this one sentence, Yushu knew that she couldn't hide it from her. She must have heard everything that could be heard. With a bitter face, Yushu said, he went to Fenghua Manor to handle a case. He stayed at the post house and disappeared the next day. Noble consort Shui sighed and said, since I'm pregnant, they've been hiding it from me. With such a big matter happening at home, they didn't even send anyone to the palace to send a message. They actually don't know what the situation is like outside the palace. You're a sensible person and I didn't treat you as an outsider. If you hear anything, why don't you let me know? This was another person trying to find out what was going on. Yushu muttered in her heart. Perhaps in the eyes of outsiders, she and Shui Rui were like siblings and bosom buddies. Otherwise, why would they all think that she knew the inside story when Shui Rui disappeared? She knew a lot of the inside story, but she couldn't tell anyone even if she was beaten to death. Yushu didn't hesitate and answered, since your highness has asked, I'll tell you what I have to say. First, I'm as confused as you are about the matter of the imperial notices. I only know that a chief steward of the prime minister's residence, Su Li, was captured and brought to the Supreme Court for interrogation. The reason is that it's related to the 2 murder cases that happened in Taisher Library. Next, there's the matter of Brother Shui's disappearance. For no reason at all, it happened at this critical juncture. There are rumors that he ran away, but I don't believe them at all. I am the clearest about my eldest brother's character, so I suspect that he was kidnapped by some traitor in order to make an issue of the Emperor's wanted list, so that people would suspect that Prime Minister Shui's residence really did something big. Originally, there were groundless rumors, but they were also made to look 70 to 80% real. She couldn't tell noble consort Shui the inside story, but she could analyze it with her. After hearing this, noble consort Shui's expression turned cold. She bit her tongue and asked quietly, then who do you think is making things difficult for the Shui family? Yushu tilted her head slightly to avoid her gaze. I can't say. However, your highness, don't worry. There's no real evidence. Just rumors and slander can't be considered guilty. The innocent will be innocent. There's no need to worry. How could noble consort Shui not know who was stirring up trouble? She didn't need to say anything. She turned around to comfort her, so noble consort Shui couldn't keep asking. She stared at her for a moment and her expression relaxed. She smiled slightly and said, good child, after hearing what you said, I feel much more at ease. Then she asked about the Book of the Universe, but she didn't encourage her to take the opportunity to take bribes. After chatting for a while, she had the chief palace maid personally see her off. After leaving Zhongzue Palace, Yushu walked on the narrow path. The palace maid leading the way in front didn't see the sneer that flashed across her face. From the beginning to the end, noble consort Shui didn't express any concern about Shui Rui's safety. Even when Yushu clearly told her that Shui Rui had been captured, she didn't ask a single question. Did she forget to mention it, or was she really not worried? After leaving the palace, Yushu didn't return to the Celestial Commissioner. Instead, she returned home. She closed the door to her room and didn't want anyone to disturb her. She calmed down and asked for her divination. After seeing noble consort Shui, she felt an indescribable anxiety in her heart. Originally, she was sure that Shui Rui's life was not in danger. It was obvious that his relatives didn't care about him at all. It was as if it didn't matter whether he was dead or alive. What was important was that he didn't drag them down. However, for her, the power and wealth of the entire Shui family were not as important as the safety of Shui Rui. Ever since she got the news that Shui Rui was missing, she had been forcing herself not to let her imagination run wild and lose her mind. That was because she was afraid that she couldn't help but plan for the worst. What if Shui Rui was in danger? Yushu stayed in the quiet room that was specially made for divination from day to night. She didn't know the Eye of the 4 lines, so she couldn't use the 6-line strange technique to divine the whereabouts of Shui Rui. Also, because of the blind spot of the law of time of calamity, she couldn't divine what disaster Shui Rui had encountered, let alone who took him away. In the end, there was still no beginning or end. With red eyes, she crumpled the paper in her hand into a ball. The string that had been stretched taut in her mind almost snapped. She hated herself for being powerless. Every time she encountered any trouble or got into trouble, Shui Rui would stand up for her at the first possible moment, and when it was his turn to be in trouble, she could only wait helplessly like this. It's all my fault for not being good enough. If I had a third of Master Qing Zheng's ability, I wouldn't have to worry about this now. Yushu blamed herself secretly. She was lost in thought as she looked at the small green stove in the middle of the table where smoke was curling up. The fragrance of tihuo lingered around her body continuously. She didn't know how much time had passed. Suddenly she came to her senses and said, "Eh?" She seemed to have thought of something and her eyes lit up. How could I forget him? She couldn't find Qing Zheng for help. Wasn't there still Yun Hua? In the beginning Yun Hua and she agreed that if she helped him find his long-lost eldest son, he would lend her the book of Fantasy Fairy 6 Rens so that she could find him after she succeeded. He left her a secret code for communication. And this secret code was the name of the Suzhou magistrate who might know the whereabouts of Yun Hua's eldest son. As long as she found Yun Hua's informant somewhere in Anling City and told this secret code to the other party, then the other party would take her to see Yun Hua. Yushu was not worried about how to persuade Yun Hua to help after seeing him. The most important thing now was to find out who was the Suzhou magistrate more than 20 years ago. To avoid being exposed, she entrusted this matter to Shui Rui and asked him to send someone to the south to inquire about the exact news. Now that something had happened to Shui Rui, she couldn't wait any longer. After dinner, Yushu put on her casual clothes and rode out the door. With the emperor's informant following behind her, it was inconvenient for her to move. So she went to Wangji Tower and found someone to act on her behalf. The people in Wangji Tower were all people that Shui Rui trusted. The few assistants were all skilled, even Ah Xiang and Ah Ping who were in charge of cleaning were no exception. Although Shui Rui was not there, this group of people listened to her. She sent the inconspicuous Ah Xiang to General Feng's mansion to find Feng Xiaomiao. In his opinion, Shui Rui's friends who called each other brothers. In his opinion, only Feng Xiaomiao could be trusted and talked to. Ah Xiang had been gone for less than an hour, and he had already invited them back. Feng Xiaomiao quietly came in from the back door. Yushu was waiting for him in the courtyard. When she saw him, she quickly let him into the house. She closed the door and asked someone to guard outside. "Lotus Room, you asked me to come here in such a hurry. Is there news about my brother Rui?" Feng Xiaomiao asked anxiously without waiting for Yushu to speak. Yushu shook her head and saw his disappointed expression. At least she helped Shui Rui get revenge. At least there was still someone who remembered him. "Xiaomiao, I want to ask you for a favor. Don't be so polite. Just tell me what you want." Feng Xiaomiao thought that he and Shui Rui had a life-and-death relationship. He saw how Shui Rui treated Yushu. "Do you know anyone in the Ministry of Personnel?" "Ministry of Personnel?" Feng Xiaomiao was confused. "I know someone in the Ministry of Personnel. What are you doing?" "I want you to help me find out who was the magistrate of Suzhou about 21 or 22 years ago." "Suzhou magistrate?" Feng Xiaomiao tilted his neck and muttered. Yushu saw his strange look and quickly asked, "What's wrong? Is it hard to find out?" "Oh no. I just remembered that Uncle Shui used to be this official." Feng Xiaomiao's words were shocking. Yushu didn't react and asked him, "Which Shui?" "It's Brother Rui's father." Feng Xiaomiao's words woke her up. Yushu heard her heart thumping. All kinds of suspicions suddenly came into her mind. "Really? Did you remember wrong?" She pretended to be calm and questioned him. Feng Xiaomiao said with certainty, "Tisk, how can I remember wrong? Uncle Shui was like my father's brother when he was young. Although he passed away early, I often heard my father mention him since I could remember. Sometimes he would cry when he drank too much. I remember my father said a few times that Uncle Shui was released to Suzhou and became the magistrate of Suzhou for a few years. Because of that, the two of them were separated and couldn't meet often." "Do you remember which year he was in office?" Yushu's heart almost jumped out of her throat. She wanted to hear the answer from Feng Xiaomiao's mouth, but she was also afraid to hear the answer. Feng Xiaomiao stretched out his palm and counted his fingers. After a while he confirmed, "Well, it should be the 9th to 12th year of Baotai." Yushu blinked. After a short moment of stiffness, she laughed with Feng Xiaomiao. "That's not it. I want to know which magistrate was in office during the 4th to 6th years of Zhaoqing." In order to prevent Feng Xiaomiao from seeing through her, she picked up the teacup in her hand and wanted to cover it up, but her fingers could not help but tremble. Fortunately, Feng Xiaomiao was careless and did not notice any clues. "I thought it was something difficult." It turns out that you just want to find out about someone. Feng Zhaomiao patted his chest. Leave it to me. Just wait for the news. Yu Shu did not forget to remind him, this is my private matter. You must not leak it. Feng Zhaomiao promised her and told her not to worry. He was an honest person. If Yu Shu did not mention why she wanted to find out about such a person, he would not ask in detail. After a cup of tea, Yu Shu watched Feng Zhaomiao leave through the back door. Then she sat alone by the small pond in the backyard and was in a daze. Without warning, the clue that Yunhua left for her would point directly to Shui Rui's father. She used her brain to think about it. Feng Zhaomiao clearly remembered that Shui Rui's father was once the magistrate of Suzhou. How could Shui Rui not know? He clearly knew who the person she wanted to find out about was, but he hid the truth from her and stalled for time. What for? There was an answer in her heart that was about to come out, but she could not believe it no matter what. A gust of night wind blew and blew the lanterns hanging under the eaves. The light and shadow in front of her opened and closed, just like her messy mood. Yu Shu sat up from the marble bricks. The cold slate made her legs numb. She sniffed and returned to her room with her arms crossed. The next day, when Shaoan, who had been absent from work recently, came to the Celestial Commissioner's office, he was shocked to see Yu Shu. He saw that her eyes were bloodshot, and there were dark circles under her eyes. Her eyes were swollen. He thought that she was poisoned. Yu Shu waved her hand and explained before he could ask, I got blinded by the wind yesterday. I didn't sleep well last night. Don't think too much. In fact, she had inhaled too much tihu and had sequelae. She couldn't sleep at night and she had something on her mind. She stared at her eyes until dawn. That was why she became like this. Then go in and lie down. There are no classes in the study today. I'll stay here the entire day. If there's anything you need to do, just let me know. Yu Shu didn't feel sleepy at all, but with her present state she couldn't do anything, so she told him. She turned and went into the cubicle to rest. She thought that she wouldn't be able to sleep, but not long after she laid down, she drifted into the land of dreams. She slept until noon without anyone disturbing her. When she woke up again, she was full of energy. But she didn't think that delay was waiting for her in front. Darren, this subordinate, was walking around the prison this morning and heard a matter. Su Qin came back and reported to her. Yu Shu sat under the window, holding the donkey roast meat that Wen Shaoan had sent someone to buy from the busy streets. She chewed on the soft meat as she nodded for him to speak. I heard that Ning Wangfu gave birth to a little imperial grandson. It seems to be the child of a concubine, so there wasn't much of a commotion when washing Xiena. But that is Ning Wangye's first son, so many people are talking about it. Hearing such gossip, Yu Shu didn't think much of it at the time. In the middle of the afternoon, Jing Qin silently came. Come with me. He came in from outside. When he passed by her door, he stopped for a moment. After saying this, he went upstairs. Yu Shu couldn't see anything from his expression, but her intuition told her that it wasn't a good thing. She put down the documents in her hands and went to Jing Chen's room on the second floor. She closed the door behind her. Why did you come at this time? Yu Shu asked. Jing Chen, the temporary right commander, didn't have any desire for power. If he didn't want to see her, he wouldn't come if he didn't have to. Jing Chen didn't waste words with her and got straight to the point. The emperor wants to investigate the Shui family. Yu Shu frowned and said, Isn't it already being investigated? That Governor Su had been taken away for half a month and he still hadn't been released after being interrogated. Jing Chen shook his head. It was clear that she didn't understand what he meant. He could only say it more clearly. The great advisor has interrogated Su Li and used torture, but nothing came out. I think that Su Li really doesn't know anything, but the Shui family is still very suspicious. What do you mean? The great advisor secretly investigated the murder case. He suspected that the murderer who killed Zhang Shuiyuan was an old servant from the Taisher library. But after Su Li was taken to the Supreme Court, that old servant disappeared. Jing Chen solemnly said, Su Li insisted that when I was in danger last year, he was escorting Brother Shui back to the capital. If the emperor wants to investigate, he has already secretly ordered to bring Brother Shui back and interrogate him. Coincidentally, Brother Shui disappeared at this time, which increased the emperor's suspicion. He increasingly suspected that the Shui family has disloyal intentions. After yesterday's morning court, the emperor used the issue of sending troops to Wei country to provoke Prime Minister Shui in the Tai An Hall. Out of character, the emperor ordered him to suspend the meeting and go home to reflect on his mistakes. Although Yu Shu had already predicted this, She still couldn't help but be shocked when she heard that the situation had taken a turn for the worse. I saw the great advisor this morning and heard from him that last night, the emperor secretly sent someone to the Shui family to take away several people and put them in prison for interrogation in the Supreme Court. This morning the emperor sent an oral order to Guohuai and the minister of the Supreme Court. He said that Brother Shui, as the minister of the Supreme Court, neglected his duty and left his post without permission. Therefore he was suspended from his post and investigated. Bad news came one after another. Yu Shu suddenly realized what Jing Chen meant when he said, "The emperor wants to investigate the Shui family." First he found an excuse to block Shui Lingnan outside the palace gate. Then he came late at night to take him away without giving him a chance to defend himself. Finally he suspended Shui Rui, whose whereabouts were unknown, for investigation. This series of actions made people unable to resist. Emperor Zhaoqing's swift and decisive means could be imagined that once the Shui family was found to have traces of rebellion, he would not be lenient. Seeing Yu Shu's changing expression, Jing Chen wanted to say something but stopped himself. He was afraid that she would be angry if he asked. However, he was really suspicious and had to ask, Do you still believe that Brother Shui is innocent? If Shui Rui hadn't disappeared, he would have been in prison by now. Thinking about it this way rather than saying that he was held hostage, Jing Chen believed that he was more likely to be in hiding. She believed that Shui Rui was innocent and was implicated. This worried Jing Chen. He was afraid that she would be used by others. Yu Shu was trying to figure out Emperor Zhaoqing's thoughts when she suddenly heard him change the topic and ask about this. She was startled. The worry on her face disappeared. Her clear black and white almond-shaped eyes stared straight into people's hearts. I don't dare to say whether the Shui family has the intention to rebel or not, but I dare to guarantee with my head that my brother is innocent. P.S. Chapter 719. There were many small villages and towns in the capital region. 10 miles north of the capital, there was a nameless village. There were more than a dozen families in the village. They were all farmers who worked from sunrise to sunset. Who would have thought that Shui Rui, whose disappearance had caused an uproar in the capital, was now trapped in this small village? Half a month ago he was handling a case in Fenghua Mansion and temporarily stayed at the post house. On the night that Yu Shu sent someone to inform him, a man quietly broke into his lodgings. With just one sentence he took the initiative to leave with the man. The man said, "If you want to know who killed your adoptive father, come with me." It was not that he was not cautious enough, but there were very few people in the world who knew that he was not Shui Zhao's biological son. Even if he knew it was a trap, he could not remain indifferent. Moreover, the man was very skilled. Even if he refused to go with him, he would certainly have other ways to take him away. Moreover, Yu Shu sent someone here. If he disappeared for no reason, she would be the first to know the details of his disappearance. Based on their tacit understanding, she would know the details of his disappearance. First, there were no signs of fighting in the room, and second, no one was alarmed. She would definitely guess that he was not in danger of death. Shui Rui thought that he had considered everything, but he had miscalculated the importance he held in Yu Shu's heart. It would be fine if he disappeared for 3 to 5 days, but there was no news of him for half a month. How could she remain calm and not be affected by her emotions? It was a small farmhouse yard surrounded by earthen walls. There were 3 rooms in the yard. The west room was the kitchen, the central room was the sleeping quarters, and the east end was a thatched hut, next to the barn where a donkey was kept and a horse was hitched. After that person lured Shui Rui out of Radiant Phoenix Estate, he brought Shui Rui to this small village, and Shui Rui ate and lived in this small courtyard. That person didn't restrict Shui Rui from moving about, and it was only when Shui Rui went out to handle some matters would the person politely invite Shui Rui into the house to wait. One day the man took the donkey out again in the morning. Right now Shui Rui was locked in the central room. The door was locked from the outside. There were 2 mud windows in the wall of the room. They were about half an arm wide and could let in the air and light. But people couldn't crawl out. Shui Rui placed a stool under the earthen window. He had nothing to do, so he looked at the world outside the courtyard and pondered. A few days ago he tried to break the door, but when he split open the door and found that it was wrapped in stone, he gave up on the idea of escaping. More than 10 days had passed, and he was well aware of his situation. He had also roughly guessed the purpose of the person who imprisoned him. To be precise, they did not want to imprison him, but to prevent him from returning to the capital. If he did not know what had happened in the capital, he would have been kept in the dark. Coincidentally, the messenger sent by Yu Shu was ahead of him. This was not difficult to deduce. The snort of a donkey came from outside the door. The man returned. The donkey was carrying a bulging backpack. It was unclear what he had bought. "Lord Shui, I'm back." Jin Ku unloaded the backpack from the donkey and quickly walked to the front of the house. He freed his hands to unlock the door and greeted Shui Rui, who was sitting by the window. He did not treat him like a prisoner but more like a guest. He pushed open the thick door and it immediately lit up. Shui Rui saw Jin Ku walk in, put down half of the things and hurriedly carry the other half to the next room to start a fire. He was not worried that Jin Ku would take the opportunity to escape. Shui Rui got up and followed. Jin Ku was chopping the lamb bones. He rolled up his sleeves and chopped with great force. There was a meticulous expression on his face. He looked up at Shui Rui, who was standing by the door of the kitchen with his arms crossed. He chuckled at Shui Rui with an indiscernible fawning look. He explained, "I ran into some trouble on the way back, so I came back late. I saw that you didn't touch the pancake on the table. You probably found it too dry and hard to chew. It's fine. Let's eat meat tonight. I'll stew some mutton soup for you. I guarantee it will be delicious. Oh, I bought some clean clothes from town. Go try them on and see if they fit." Shui Rui did not respond. He turned around and returned to his room with a silent face. Jin Ku used his wrist to wipe away the blood on the tip of his nose. He muttered to himself, "It's already the 5th day. He doesn't care about me or ask me. Why do I feel so uneasy?" In the evening, the mutton soup was ready and served on the table. Jin Ku saw Shui Rui walk in from outside and filled a big bowl for him. He saw that Shui Rui had changed into a set of greenish-gray clothes, and his hair was half wet. Shui Rui sat calmly in front of him with a pair of chopsticks in his left hand. He slowly stirred the soup in half a circle, and his posture inadvertently made him look like the person Jin Ku respected the most in his heart. For a moment, Jin Ku forgot about the fragrant mutton in front of him and only stared at him. That was until Shui Rui looked up and gave him a sharp look. Jin Ku looked embarrassed and tried to strike a conversation. "You're not used to living in such a remote place, right?" "I'm not used to living here. When did he ask you to let me go?" He didn't expect that Shui Rui would speak up for the first time. Jin Ku didn't even have the time to feel overwhelmed by the unexpected favor before he realized that something was wrong. Shui Rui's sudden attack caused him to be unable to react in time. Shui Rui did not wait for him to answer. He put down his chopsticks and stared at Jin Ku with his dark eyes as if he had seen through everything. "You don't need to play dumb with me anymore. I already know who ordered you to lure me here. Go back and tell him that no matter what his purpose is, let me go back to the capital as soon as possible. Otherwise, I will never see him again." Jin Ku was stunned and looked at him suspiciously. He could not tell if he was lying or not. After all, since he'd taken Shui Rui away from Fenghua Estate half a month ago until today, he hadn't revealed a single word of his background, so how did Shui Rui discern an inkling? Seeing that Jin Ku did not believe him, Shui Rui smiled coldly. He only said one sentence: "Return to the princess's tomb." There were only a few people who knew about his background. This person had asked him to stay away from the capital before the Shui family was in trouble. Obviously he had expected it. Originally, he had suspected that someone was targeting the Shui family. However, Jin Ku's humble attitude towards him made him have other guesses. In August of this year, Yu Shu and Jing Chen went to the princess's tomb to worship. In a secluded place in the countryside of An County, they met Mr. Yenye, who had concealed his identity. Later, it was proven that Mr. Yenye was Yun Huai, who faked his death 20 years ago. After returning to the capital, Shui Rui accidentally learned the truth from Yu Shu. It turned out that Yun Huai's other long-lost son was him. Yun Hua and Yu Shu had a private agreement. He asked her to help him find the whereabouts of his eldest son and left her a clue. He asked her to investigate a Suzhou magistrate who was in office during the Baotai period. In fact, that magistrate was Shui Rui's adoptive father, Shui Zhao. From this, it could be seen that Yun Hua had an ulterior motive. He asked Yu Shu not to find someone for him. Instead, he had already decided that Shui Rui was his father. He could not recognize him directly, so he borrowed Yu Shu's mouth to tell Shui Rui. He asked him to choose whether he wanted to recognize his father or not. If he guessed correctly, the martial arts brother that Zhao Xiaozhu mentioned was Jin Ku, and the one who asked Jin Ku to bring him to this small mountain village to hide was undoubtedly Yun Hua. Shui Rui's sudden revelation made Jin Ku speechless. The two of them ate the meal without tasting anything. That night, Shui Rui was lying on the simple and crude wooden bed with his clothes on. When he was half asleep, he heard the sound of the chain on the door rubbing against each other. He did not need to open his eyes to know that Jin Ku had left quietly. Jin Ku traveled quickly through the night. At dawn, he arrived at a small town with a population of less than 100 households. He stopped at the back door of a house on North Street. Hearing the knock on the door, Zhao Xiaozhu yawned and came out to answer the door. With a pair of sleepy eyes he complained, "It's so early in the morning and the sky is not even bright yet. Big brother, if you don't sleep, others will." Jin Ku did not have the time to listen to his nonsense. He pushed Zhao Xiaozhu's head away with his big palm and entered the house. He asked in a low voice, "When did foster father sleep last night?" "He slept before the third night watch period." When Jin Ku heard this, he went forward and knocked on the door without hesitation. "Foster father, there's an emergency." Without waiting for him to say it a second time, the lights in the house lit up. Then there was a short ding of the bell. Jin Ku turned his head and gave Zhao Xiaozhu, who was following behind him, a look to ask him to wait outside. He pushed the door open and entered alone. Yun Hua was sitting on the edge of the bed with a smock draped over his shoulders. He bent over to reach the teapot on the small wooden table. A strand of white hair hung down from his shoulders. The hazy candlelight revealed his age at this moment. Jin Ku's eyes were wet. He strode forward. He took the teapot from Yun Hua's hands and half-squatted in front of the bed to serve tea. He was born in the north. His father was a Mongolian officer who invaded Yang City, and his mother was a pitiful singer. Half of the blood of the barbarians flowed in his body. He struggled in humiliation since he was a child and bore the brand of a slave. He witnessed his birth mother being trampled by a group of ruffian soldiers, but he had to beg for mercy to survive. He hated the world and he hated himself even more. He hated that he could not die, but he was lucky enough to live. If he had not met his foster father, who gave him a chance to choose to escape from the abyss of suffering, he would probably continue to live a despicable life, a life worse than death. A palm fell on his shoulder, and Jin Ku was pulled back to reality from his brief memories. He raised his head and saw his foster father's questioning gaze. He suppressed his emotions, straightened his body and said, "My younger brother noticed. He guessed where I came from and asked me to bring a message to you." Yun Hua's expression changed slightly. He opened his mouth and patted his shoulder, indicating for him to continue. "My younger brother said that he wants to go back to the capital and asked you to let him go." Shui Rui's original words were not so gentle. Jin Ku certainly would not copy his words and use them to stab his foster father in the heart. Yun Hua's eyes flashed. He raised 3 fingers and made another gesture. "You want me to send him back to the capital after 3 days?" Jin Ku understood, but he did not understand why Yun Hua made such a decision. "You have already calculated that the Shui family is facing imminent disaster. If he takes the risk to return to the capital at this time, he will most likely die. Why don't you let me explain it to him? I think my younger brother is a reasonable person. If he knows that foster father is doing this for his own good, he will not blame you wrongly." Yun Hua shook his head and said in sign language, "The Shui family raised him and he will not easily give it up. In the end he must put an end to this." Jin Ku pursed his lips tightly, and it seemed that he did not agree with Yun Hua's decision. Although he and Shui Rui were brothers with different surnames and had only known each other for a short half a month, he had followed Yun Hua for more than 10 years and often felt his fatherly love and guilt for his son. He felt that he had replaced Shui Rui and enjoyed Yun Hua's love and care for many years. He had long vowed in his heart that if he found his younger brother one day, he would repay him double. Now that he was asked to send Shui Rui to walk into a trap, how could he be willing to do so? "Are you not going to meet your younger brother?" Yun Hua sighed softly. If he did not avenge his wife's death and his son's death, he would not be able to face his own flesh and blood. Jin Ku scrutinized his expression and suddenly knelt down. He pleaded, "Foster father, please allow me to stay by my younger brother's side and protect him." Yun Hua knew that he was passionate. He hesitated for a moment and placed his left hand on his shoulder, silently agreeing. Then he told him a few things and asked him to go out and bid farewell to Zhao Xiaozhu. Just when the capital was in turmoil because of the Shui family's change, the imperial court made another big move. In the last 10 days of the 14th year of Zhao Qing, Emperor Zhao Qing decided to send troops to conquer the island of Japan. He drafted 6 edicts to deploy troops, and the first edict was to appoint Prince of Dongjing Jiang Huaying as the Grand Marshal of the Eastern Expedition. The courtiers who originally disagreed with Prince Dongjing's decision to lead the army chose to remain silent after Shui Lingnan was suspended from his post and grounded. Everyone was worried for their own safety. On the day of the edict, Madame Wei heard the news. She, who was very sensitive to politics, smelled a conspiracy. She immediately sent someone to find her daughter who was wandering outside. "Mother, why are you in such a hurry to find me?" Jiang Mia was reluctantly brought back. Madame Wei asked her, "You don't come home all day. What are you busy with outside? Didn't you hear that the Shui family is in trouble? Shui Dalong has been missing for a few days." "I'm looking for him everywhere," Jiang Mia said worriedly. Madame Wei had heard about it long ago. After all, her son and Shui Rui were brothers. She couldn't be completely unconcerned. However, in the imperial capital, her every move was restricted by others. She couldn't ask about it personally, but she didn't stop Jiang Mia from looking for him everywhere. However, after today, it would be another matter. "From this moment onwards, you are not allowed to go out without my permission," Madame Wei warned her sternly. "Mother." Jiang Mia widened her eyes and refused to comply. "Shui Dalong and I owe him a debt of gratitude. Since young you taught me to repay a debt of gratitude. Now that his family is in trouble, aren't we being ungrateful wolves if we just stand by and watch?" She talked back without thinking. Madame Wei laughed angrily and slapped her on the head. She scolded in a low voice, "You only know that he is in prison. Do you know that our family is also in trouble?" Jiang Mia was stunned. She was immediately silenced and asked, "Mother, why do you say that? Is the emperor going to make things difficult for our Jiang family again?" Madame Wei's face darkened. This child wasn't stupid and immediately hit the nail on the head. This matter was of great importance. She didn't hide it, but she was afraid that she couldn't explain it clearly now. This silly daughter was causing trouble behind her back again. Thus, she told Jiang Mia about Emperor Zhaoqing appointing Jiang Huaying as the Great Marshal of the Eastern Punitive Expedition to attack Wei Nation. Jiang Mia had followed her brother in and out of military camps since young. She was familiar with military strategy and had fought in wars. She had seen blood and killed hundreds of people. She was the #1 female general of Ningdong City. When she heard about the war, her first reaction was to frown deeply. This war wasn't going to be easy. It was currently the 10th month and it was getting colder every day. If they wanted to attack Wei Nation, they would have to cross the sea. Imperial Brother had received the imperial edict that he would need at most a month to prepare the troops before setting off. At that time it would be freezing cold. If they encountered bad weather, a group of people would freeze to death before they could meet up with the enemy. Brother Wang had a well-trained navy under him. If he sent all of them out this time, he might have the confidence to win the battle. However, if he did that, the loss would be too great. If he conserved his forces and suffered a defeat, it was obvious that the emperor would not let go of this opportunity to punish the Jiang family. "Dog Emperor!" Jiang Mia scolded angrily. "If it wasn't for our Jiang family guarding the bitter cold land of the north for decades, half of Da'an would have been taken by the Tatars long ago. How could he sit comfortably and enjoy peace? Now that the world is settled, he's using himself to measure others. He's afraid that Imperial Brother will have disloyalty and wants to get rid of the donkey when it's no longer useful. He's simply muddle-headed and tyrannical." Madame Wei's eyes flickered, but she didn't reprimand her disobedient words. She only sighed, "When the birds are gone, the fine bough will be hidden. When the cunning rabbit is dead, the hound will be cooked. Our Jiang family has been in the north for too long. Many people are jealous of your father and brother. When your father was still alive, there was still a trace of kindness here. Today's Anling City no longer has a place for the Jiang family. Our roots have already been planted in Ningdong City. Therefore, if he wanted to uproot them, how could the emperor not put in a lot of effort? No, I have to write a letter to Imperial Brother. We can't let him send troops now. We have to find an excuse to delay it until next spring and win the war beautifully. We can't let that muddle-headed emperor get what he wants." Jiang Mia gritted her teeth. Madame Wei shook her head inwardly when she saw her being so impulsive. In the end, this daughter of hers was spoiled by them. She was smart, but it was a pity that she was reckless and often did bad things. In the future, she had to find a meticulous son-in-law to watch over her. At this moment, Madame Wei thought of the candidate she originally had her eyes on. She felt helpless and regretful. How can it be as childish as you said? Delaying military plans is a serious crime. Your imperial brother can only send troops when he receives the imperial edict. Why do you think the emperor brought us to the capital? Isn't it to restrict your imperial brother? What concubine selection and marriage is all a pretense. If Ningdong City really disobeyed the imperial edict, we will be the first to bear the brunt." When she said this, her face turned cold. I'm not afraid of your imperial brother losing the war. I'm only afraid that the emperor has other means to make your imperial brother unable to return. Hearing this, Jiang Ye's heart sank and she grabbed her mother's hand. She grabbed her mother's hand and said anxiously, "Then why don't we escape quietly?" "It's too late." Madame Wei's eyes were full of ridicule. "As I expected, the outside of the Wang residence is already filled with spies. They are monitoring everything. They would know if a fly flew out." Jiang Mia stood up with a whoosh. She walked around the room in exasperation. She kicked over a vase that was half the height of a person. She turned her head and shouted with her eyes burning with anger, "What are you afraid of? If things don't work out, I will bring my mother and kill our way out of the capital. I don't believe that the dog emperor would dare to harm a loyal and good person in broad daylight." Madame Wei stared at the broken porcelain on the floor and the broken flowers soaked in dew. She was in a daze. It was as if she could vaguely foresee the defeat of the Jiang family of Duke of Dongjing in the near future. The Jiang family was innocent, and Duke of Dongjing had the heart of a subject. However, the emperor did not believe them and would not let them go. They could only blame themselves. A ruler was a ruler and a subject was a subject. In the evening, Yushu also heard about the imperial edict that Emperor Zhaoqing wanted to send Duke of Dongjing to lead the troops into battle. She did not have much of a reaction to it. What troubled her now was another matter. Shui Rui was very likely to be Yunhua's son. If Feng Zhaomiao did not mention the old matter of Shui Rui's father being the Yangzhou magistrate, she would still be planning to help Yunhua find his son. Based on Shui Rui's character, there was no way he could escape from this matter. He wouldn't lie to her for no reason unless he had no other choice. After she understood what was going on, Yushu did not blame Shui Rui for hiding it from her. Instead, she felt that Yunhua was a scumbag. He said that he wanted her to help him find his son, but in fact he had already found the right person. He was just using her as a mouthpiece to leak the information to Shui Rui. However, she was kept in the dark and still foolishly hoped that Shui Rui would help her find the person. On the other hand, this seemed to be a good thing. Yunhua had a brilliant plan. He was an unfathomable person. Perhaps he had already predicted that the Shui family would be in trouble. Yushu boldly guessed that Shui Rui's disappearance in Fenghua Manor was probably because Yunhua had taken him away. If that was the case, she would be able to put down her worries. But what if she was wrong? Yushu hesitated for a day and finally decided to go to the south of the city. After all, she had to confirm it carefully before she could be at ease. Yushu's carriage made a circle in the south of the city. She bought everything she saw along the way so that the secret agent of the palace who was following her thought that she was just out to buy. At noon there was a sudden drizzle. The carriage stopped at a place called Calabash Alley. Yushu held an umbrella and got out of the carriage. Lu Hong and Su Qing followed closely behind. "The 11th house from the east, the 11th house from the east," Yushu said silently. She counted the houses one by one until she reached the end of the alley. There was another street in front of her. She stood at the intersection and looked back at the 10th house. After staring at it for a while, she had to admit that she had been tricked. There were a total of 10 houses in this Calabash Alley. How could there be an 11th house? It was impossible for her to remember wrongly. It could only be that Yunhua had fooled her. He did not intend to meet her at all. It was a cold day, but Yushu felt a surge of anger rising to her head. How could this person be so treacherous? He had fooled her into running errands for him for nothing. In the end, she did not even have a place to go to settle the score. "Master, the rain is getting heavier. Let's get in the carriage and go." Lu Hong only thought that Yushu came out to get some fresh air. Seeing that the rain was getting heavier and the wind was blowing on her face, he quickly persuaded her. "Let's go back." Yushu was full of grievances, but she had no one to complain to. She could only swallow her anger and leave. Yunhua was such a shrewd person, he would not just watch Shui Rui be in trouble, he would definitely make the first move. Yunhua was a shrewd person, he would definitely not watch Shui Rui be in trouble. A series of changes happened to the Shui family. There were many people who were happy to see it. Not to mention others, the residence of the Assistant Minister of Revenue, Yin Zhorong, was one example. Not long ago, the third young master of the Assistant Minister's residence, Yin Yuanbua, was instigated by Prince Ning to slander Yushu's reputation in the theater. He was caught by Shui Rui and brought back to the Supreme Court. That night he was sentenced, beaten half to death and thrown into prison. His father, Yin Zhorong, did not dare to return to the residence of Prime Minister Yin to ask for help. He went to the Supreme Court several times to plead for mercy, but he was rejected. After much difficulty, he finally managed to get everything together and brought a doctor to visit his son in prison. However, he also received bad news. Inyuembua's lower body was injured. When he recovered, he was afraid that he would have a hidden injury. This hidden injury, to put it plainly, meant that Inyuembua could not have sex. This was no different from a bolt from the blue. Injorong's eyes were dazed. Dengshi fainted when she got home. Even though Injorong scolded Inyuembua all day, there were many children in the fu. The husband and wife doted on their youngest son the most. The husband and wife hated each other. The grudge was too big. They had no choice but to endure the humiliation. Seeing that the Shui family was in trouble and Shui Rui had disappeared, the culprit, Yu Lianfeng, had no one to rely on. How could they restrain themselves? If they did not take revenge, they would be ashamed to be parents. Chapter 720. Yu Shu went to look for Yun Hua, but there was nothing she could do. She went to Wangji Tower, feeling helpless. The kitchen cooked a few seasonal dishes for her and drank alone to drown her sorrows. Not being able to find Yun Hua not only meant that Shui Rui's identity was a mystery, but it also meant that she had no chance of obtaining the Book of Mystery Fairy's 6 Rens. Her future suddenly became uncertain. The rain outside had stopped long ago. Pushing open the window, it was cool. Yu Shu drank a pot of huadiao. Just when she was a little tipsy, she heard footsteps in the corridor outside. In the blink of an eye, the footsteps were at the door. "Miss, someone just came and said that something happened in your residence. Please go back and make a decision." The shopkeeper, Lin Fu, reported anxiously. Yu Shu frowned, but she didn't panic. She put down her wine cup and asked, "Who is it?" "Ask him to come up." Lin Fu left in a hurry. After a while he came back with a person. It was her head maid, Exan. When Exaner saw Yu Shu, she knelt down. There were outsiders in the room, so she didn't say anything. However, looking at her pale face, she knew that it was not a small matter. "Old Lin, go and do your work," Yu Shu said. Lin Fu tactfully hid away. Before he left, he didn't forget to take Xiao Dai, who was serving in the room with him. "Tell me what happened at home?" Exeter quickly explained the situation. The rain in the afternoon had just stopped. Several bailiffs came to the Yu residence and asked to bring Aunt Chui back to the Yamen. Yu Shu wasn't at home, so the residence was in a mess. He Fangji didn't come back from the medical center, so Zhao Hui could only come out and deal with the bailiffs to ask about the situation. It turned out that someone came to the Yamen early in the morning, claiming that a family servant eloped with someone 10 years ago and escaped. Now that they found her, they found that the servant had already had children and established her own family, so they came to the Yamen to report. The family that complained was none other than Aunt Chui's previous master, Assistant Minister Yin of the Ministry of Revenue, Yin Zhorong. The bailiff said that the head steward of the Yin family had Madame Yu's contract to sell herself, and there were witnesses from that year. They insisted on taking Lady Yu to the Yamen for interrogation. Lady He didn't agree and wanted to force their way in, but Steward Zhou stopped them with the guards. At that time the situation was too chaotic. Madame He was hit on the head by someone and bled a lot. Yu Shu was originally able to keep her composure, but when she heard this, her expression suddenly changed. She stood up and said, "Hit your head? Are you all right? It looks like there's an opening." Exeter had always been gentle, but now she was gnashing her teeth in anger. Those violent bailiffs saw that the situation was not good. They were no match for our protectors. Taking advantage of the chaos, he slipped away. "Master, quickly go back and take a look." Yu Shu didn't say anything else and walked out. Lin Fu was waiting downstairs. He didn't go far and saw them coming down. He hurriedly went forward and asked with concern, "What can I do for you, miss?" Yu Shu paused for a moment, then said to him, "Get Ah Ping and Ah Xiang to come with me." She was angry, but she didn't let her anger get the better of her. Today things would not end well. Assistant Minister Yin had made a ruthless move to oppose her. It was obvious that he wanted to seek revenge for that bastard Yin Yuanbua. Those bailiffs had left today. They would probably come again tomorrow. She wasn't afraid of making a big fuss, but she was afraid that her family would be implicated. Ah Ping and Ah Xiang were skilled, so she brought them back to guard the house for the time being, just in case. When Yu Shu returned to the residence with her people, she glanced at the main hall. She saw that the tables and chairs were overturned, and the 2 vases at the door had been pushed over. They were broken on the ground, but no one cleaned them up. When she entered the backyard, she didn't see anyone. When he Fangji and her husband's residence, he saw a courtyard full of servants. Zhou Hu was kneeling outside. Yushu was angry and didn't even look at them when she walked past them. What use were they if they couldn't protect their master? Yifangji came back before her. At this time he was sitting at the head of Zhao Hui's bed, comforting her. When he saw Yushu come in he didn't complain. He just sighed and said to her, "Your mother's head was injured once before, which left a sequela. This time it was lucky that it didn't hit the same place, otherwise..." Before he could finish his words he was pulled by Zhao Hui. She glared at him and turned to Yushu and said gently, "It's not a big deal. It's just a scratch. The chair's leg was broken so it flew past my scalp." She said it lightly, but Yushu clearly saw that her forehead was wrapped with a white gauze, which was faintly stained with blood. She looked very weak. Thinking of Zhao Hui's tragic life, she was killed once in Yang City and almost lost her life. Now she suffered again because of her. Yushu was very upset. It was also because she was so anxious about the Shui family these days that she didn't predict the disaster for Zhao Hui and the others. She didn't predict the bloody disaster today. "It's all my fault. Those people came for me. I'm sorry." Zhao Hui didn't blame her. When she heard her call her mother, her heart softened. She waved her hand and asked her to come over. "It's okay to tell me. What are you going to do about what happened today?" Yushu bowed her head in silence. She didn't know what to say. Zhao Hui said anxiously, "You can't be muddle-headed. Although your mother used to be a maid in someone's residence, that was many years ago. Even if they said that they had a contract to sell her, we can't admit it. This was a simple reason." Zhao Hui understood it. Once Aunt Chui was judged as a fugitive slave by the government, the other party held her slave contract and became her real master. She couldn't change her fate for the rest of her life. On the surface, this matter didn't hinder Yushu's future. After all, her biological father was a famous scholar. The only smart thing Aunt Chui did in her life was to remarry into the Ji family. She didn't sell her son and daughter as slaves. Therefore, when Yushu broke away from the Ji family and asked for her and Yu Xiaoxiu's residence card, she didn't encounter any obstacles. Because the siblings lived under someone else's roof, they didn't sell themselves as slaves. Later they established their own family in the capital. Yushu was afraid that Aunt Chui's background would be manipulated. Therefore, after the Ji family was ruined, she first hid Aunt Chui. As time passed, she used the gentleman's hibiscus banquet to ask for a favor from Imperial Consort Shui and went to the Ministry of Revenue to change Aunt Chui's household registration. However, she only guarded against the Ji family's misdeeds. She didn't guard against the Yin family's drastic measures and caught her unprepared. If they really brought Aunt Chui to the Yamen for interrogation today, Yushu was sure that Assistant Minister Yin would have a way to prove that Aunt Chui had betrayed her master and escaped. Then he would openly capture her and bring her back to the Assistant Minister's residence to be ordered around as a slave. In this way Yushu wouldn't have to care about her face. If the Assistant Minister's residence was ruthless and beat Aunt Chui to death, the result would be even more unthinkable. The Yin family was trying to kill her. Yushu gritted her teeth and raised her head to smile at Zhao Hui. She said, "With me here, our family isn't afraid of trouble. You just focus on recuperating and don't worry about anything else. After this matter is resolved, I will help you vent your anger." Zhao Hui saw that she wasn't out of ideas and relaxed. To be honest, in her heart, Yushu was more reliable than anyone else. Even Fangji couldn't compare. After checking on Zhao Hui's injuries, Yushu came out of the courtyard. Zhou Hu and a group of guards were still kneeling outside. It had rained earlier, so the ground was wet and their legs were covered in mud. Even so, they didn't move to a clean spot and quietly waited for Yushu to deal with them. This was the good thing about the servants trained in the consecrated courtyard. They were well behaved. Yushu stopped in front of Zhou Hu. With a cold expression she said, "I should have rewarded you for today's matter. You all did the right thing." If someone wanted to barge into the rear residence, no matter who they were, you all had to stop them. Even if they made a huge mess, I, as the master, would take care of it for you all. But you all were wrong. You shouldn't have attacked in front of the womenfolk. Couldn't you have lured them outside before fighting? Where did all of your brains go? Zhou Hu and the others trembled. This group of burly men couldn't even raise their heads after being scolded by a little girl. At the same time they felt their blood boil. In the end they were all servants. They dared to fight with officials because they wanted to protect their masters. Yushu didn't punish them just because they had chased away a few bailiffs. Instead she said they should be rewarded. How could they not accept this? Seeing that this is the first time you've committed a crime, and this is the first time I've seen something like this, I won't punish you heavily. However, there's no reward. You all don't need to kneel. Go do what you need to do. If anyone comes looking for trouble, you don't need to be polite. Throw them all out. After saying this, she didn't care what they did and led a few servant girls to Aunt Chui's place. After a while, Lin jogged back and stopped Zhou Hu. In front of the group of guards who hadn't left, she said in a crisp voice, "Big brother Zhou, the young lady said that she'll have the kitchen add 2 dishes of meat and fish tonight. Open a few jars of old wine to calm down." After saying this, she ran off. Zhou Hu was stunned. He turned his head and saw the bright eyes of the group of guards. He coughed and put on a straight face, scolding, "What's there to be happy about? Master is benevolent and didn't punish us. Have a good sleep tonight. Tomorrow wake up and be alert." When Yu Shu arrived at Qingshizhai, Aunt Chui was still hiding in the room, not daring to come out. How could she not know about the big commotion in the front yard this afternoon? She was afraid that someone would break in and capture her. When Yu Shu entered the room, she saw her curled up on the bed, wrapped in a blanket. She stared at the door with a panicked expression. She was obviously frightened. "Little girl, you're finally back." Aunt Chui grabbed the blanket and squeezed out 2 tears to Yu Shu. "There are officials coming to arrest me. You have to save me." Yu Shu felt a headache. She didn't treat her well. She picked a place nearby and sat down. She waved her hand to let everyone in the room leave. Except stood guard outside the door. "You also know that there are officials coming to the mansion. Do you know why they want to arrest you?" Aunt Chui nodded timidly. "It's the Yin family who reported to the officials that I eloped with your father. They also said that they have my slave contract. Logically speaking, I am still their servant." Yu Shu took a breath and asked her again, "Then tell me the truth. Did you elope with my father?" Aunt Chui's eyes widened instantly. She shook her head vigorously and said in a shrill voice, "No. It was Madame who gave me to your father. I didn't have the guts to elope with someone." Yu Shu narrowed her eyes. She felt very lucky in her heart. She confirmed again, "Then what about the contract you signed when you sold yourself to the Yin family?" Aunt Chui's face was bitter. She felt wronged and said, "How would I know? Maybe your damn father kept it." Chapter 721. Yu Shu stayed at Aunt Chui's place until it was dark. She asked all the questions she needed to ask. However, Aunt Chui was so muddle-headed that she couldn't even remember the most important things, but she remembered the trivial things clearly. After piecing it all together, Yu Shu understood the whole thing. According to Aunt Chui, she had been a servant in the Yin family since she was a child. At first, she cleaned the yard of Madame Dowager Yin, the current Prime Minister's wife. After a few years, she was promoted to be a curtain-folding maid. Later, Yin Zhorong, the son of a concubine, got married and left the family. So Madame Dowager Yin sent Aunt Chui to make trouble for her daughter-in-law. Concubine Chui was interested in Yin Zhorong and kept throwing flirtatious glances at him. However, all of this was seen by Madame Yin Deng. When Yu Zhengyu's father went to the capital to attend the imperial examinations, he stayed in the outer courtyard. Madame Yin Deng used a little trick to make concubine Chui, who wanted to throw herself into the arms of the master, and the poor scholar become engaged. Aunt Chui won the lottery and became pregnant with Yu Shu. Madame Yin saw it. She took the opportunity to be a good person. She made a matchmaker for Papa Yu and gave him some money as a dowry. Then Papa Yu secretly took Aunt Chui back to the hometown to get married. This story sounded good, but Yu Shu found that there was a big problem when she really looked into it. First of all, Madame Yin didn't do it openly when she married Aunt Chui to Papa Yu. That was to say, it was done secretly. She let Aunt Chui go, gave the dowry and sent her away without saying a word. Moreover, Madame Yin didn't return the indenture to Aunt Chui, so it was not clear whether she gave it to Papa Yu or not. This was called dead men tell no tales. Shu Shu. Concubine Chui called Yu Shu's nickname, which Yu Shu had long forgotten. Seeing that her daughter's face was so ugly, she didn't dare to be brave. Even her tone was weak. "Do you think that Madame Yin really didn't give my contract to your father?" Yu Shu asked her. "Then do you remember that my father took you to the Yamen to get rid of your slave registration? To get rid of the slave status and be a good citizen, it was not enough to just get the indenture. You had to go to the local government to get rid of the slave registration. Otherwise, even if the owner didn't care, you would still be a pariah." Aunt Chui said with a sad face, "I said I don't remember. Your father didn't mention it to me." She hated him so much that she didn't even want to talk to him. Who knew if he helped her get rid of her slave registration? As soon as Yu Shu heard her crying, she was annoyed. She glared at her and said, The Yin family dared to take your indenture to the Yamen because Yin Zhorong was a senior officer in the Ministry of Revenue. Even if you got rid of your slave registration, he still had a way to change it. They also said that they have witnesses who can prove that you eloped with my father more than 10 years ago. As long as you go to the Yamen and go to court, you won't be able to defend yourself. Just wait to be caught and used as a slave. Aunt Chui's eyes were dizzy. She trembled and said, "How can I do this? How can I do this? I'm already the wife of an official. In the future, I can count on you and Xiaoxiu to help me earn a title of nobility. How can I be a servant to his family? Isn't this killing me? God, this is killing me." Sob, 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 sob. As she said that, she wailed and pointed at Yushu. She cried and scolded, "It's all your fault for offending others. In the end, the retribution is on me. If you didn't ruin the marriage with the Yin family, there wouldn't be so many disasters now. What sin did I commit to give birth to a debt-demanding ghost like you?" Bang. Yushu punched the wall of the bed and made a loud noise. Aunt Shui was so scared that she froze. She was already under a lot of pressure because of Shui Rui's disappearance. Now, someone was using Aunt Shui to create trouble and add to the chaos. However, Aunt Shui didn't want to save trouble. She couldn't bear it anymore and exploded on the spot. "Who told you to look for your old master when you had nothing better to do? For your glory and wealth, you're even willing to sell your own daughter. If you really want to bring up old scores, when my father died, you should have been a widow for him. At the very least, you should have set up a chastity memorial arch to accumulate merit for us sisters. Instead, you insisted on being someone's concubine. For the sake of your own good life, you implicated Xiaoxiu and I. We don't mind you making a fool of yourself, but you're blaming me for not letting you trample on yourself? If she hadn't taken over this body, how could Yushu tolerate such a sarcastic person like Aunt Shui?" Although she didn't have the memories of her previous master, she had heard from the aunt who had taken care of the siblings that although Yu family's father had died early, his ancestors had some savings and his family had land. Although the Yu family was in dire straits, they had the help of the local clan. Aunt Shui was truly a good mother. With this family's wealth, it wasn't impossible for her to raise 2 children. However, she couldn't bear the loneliness. Not long after Yu family's father died, she hooked up with the 3rd master of the Ji family and sold the Yu family's house and land to prepare a dowry for herself. Then, she happily went to the Ji family to become a concubine. If she became someone's concubine, it would be admirable if her children didn't have to worry about food and clothing. However, she only cared about her own happiness and didn't care about the life and death of the siblings. After being scolded by her, Aunt Chui's face turned green and red. Finally, she rolled her eyes and fainted. Xen was guarding outside the door. She was crying and scolding inside. Knowing that she had heard something she shouldn't have, she simply lowered her head like a quail. After a while, the room suddenly became silent. Yushu came out and said to her, "Madam is tired. Let her rest. You stay here and beat the people in the yard. Report to me later." "Yes, madam." After venting her anger at Aunt Shui, Yushu felt comfortable and began to think about countermeasures. It was beyond her expectations that the Yin family would choose such a method of shedding all pretenses of cordiality to seek revenge. Although there were grievances between them, it was not to the extent of deep hatred. However, the Yin family's complaint to the Yamen showed that they wanted to fight to the death with her. Could it be that they saw the Shui family was in trouble and saw her eldest brother was missing? They thought that she had no backing, so they took the opportunity to step on her? Yushu felt that she had found the truth. Yin Zhorong was the assistant minister of the Ministry of Revenue. It was too easy for him to tamper with the household registration. In addition, there was the so-called witness and the sale contract that she didn't know was real or fake. So, she wouldn't let Aunt Shui go to the court to testify against them. At most, she would just drag it out. Anyway, the matter had already become big. Was she afraid that people would know? If the constables came to ask for her tomorrow, she would also beat them out. Yushu was never afraid of trouble. She took out the Yao coin and made 2 divinations. She immediately made a decision. Seeing that it was getting late, she washed and went to bed. The next day, Yushu went to the Celestial Commissioner's office early in the morning and returned to the mansion after 5 o'clock. She calculated that there would be people coming to the Yamen today. As expected, around 9 o'clock in the morning, several constables came to arrest people. Yushu was talking with Zhao Hui in the backyard. Zhou Hu personally ran over to report. He handed the white, fat and adorable He Xiaochuan to the wet nurse and led him to the front yard. "Is it the same group of people from yesterday?" Yushu asked Zhou Hu as soon as they came out of Zhao Hui's yard. Oh. Yesterday, it was the minions of the Yamen in the north of the capital. Today, it's people from the Ministry of Revenue. Although Zhou Hu was a martial artist, he had been a steward in Yushu's mansion for a few months. He was no longer a novice and had some understanding of the power factions in the capital. When Yushu heard that there was a different group of people today, she thought for a moment and guessed what trick Assistant Minister Yin was playing. According to the Yin family, Aunt Chui was an escaped slave of the Yin family. After more than 10 years they found her and wanted to catch her. However, Aunt Chui had set up her own family. This was a civil dispute. Anling City had 2 yamens in the north of the capital and the south of the capital that specialized in handling lawsuits for the common people. That was why the constables from the yamen in the north of the capital could come to Yushu's mansion aggressively to arrest people. Their target was not Yushu, who was an official of the imperial court, but Aunt Chui, who was a commoner. The Ministry of Revenue had the authority to control the household register. Concubine Chui's household register was fake, so it was reasonable for her to sue the Ministry of Revenue Yamen and ask the supervisor in charge of the escaped slaves to come forward. Otherwise they could go to the Supreme Court to complain and accuse Yushu of harboring a slave. That would also make the officials come to ask for her. No matter how one looked at it, they were on the side of reason. Assistant Minister Yin was thorough in all aspects and took advantage of the situation. He was determined to bring Aunt Chui to the court. On the other hand, if she stopped them and didn't allow Aunt Chui to be taken away, then she would be in the wrong. In the end, the matter would become more and more serious. She would incur public anger and still have to hand over Aunt Chui. When the Yin family caught Aunt Chui and brought her back, Assistant Minister Yin would have the final say. It had to be said that this man's methods were many times better than his wife's. But did he really think that Yushu would obediently submit? Miss, they're in the front hall. Zhou Hu pointed to the front. The guards in the residence are all standing on the back porch. If they make a move, they'll definitely suffer the consequences. Lu Hong and Su Qing were also beside Yushu. When they saw Zhou Hu's fierce expression, they instinctively tightened their grip on the scabbards at their waists. They had heard about what had happened yesterday. As Yushu's personal bodyguards, they naturally knew what to do. The group of men rubbed their fists and rubbed their palms together, waiting for today's big fight. Who would have thought that when Yushu saw the officials from the Ministry of Revenue, she showed a smiling face and politely invited the constable to sit down. She walked to the main seat and asked knowingly, "May I know why the constables are here? Why didn't anyone come to the residence yesterday?" The constable who spoke had triangular eyes. No matter how one looked at him, he was not pleasing to the eye. However, he was just a lowly official. When Yushu offered him a seat, he dared to sit down calmly. When Yushu asked him a question, not only did he not stand up and respectfully answer, he even retorted. Lu Hong and Su Qing had been by Yushu's side for a long time and had never seen such a despicable person who didn't know how to respect others. Their faces immediately turned cold and they were about to scold him, but they were stopped by a look from Yushu. "Unfortunately, I didn't come back yesterday." "What happened?" "Constable Ho, why don't you tell me?" Yushu still had a pleasant expression on her face. Constable Ho narrowed his triangular eyes and revealed a serious expression. "Someone reported that your mother was originally a fugitive slave from another residence. 16 years ago, she stole her master's money and eloped with someone else. Today, she has changed her appearance and falsified her household registration. We received a warrant and came to arrest her. We hope that official you will make things easier for us and not make things difficult for us." Chapter 722. It was said that the king of hell was easy to provoke, but the little demons were difficult to deal with. Arrester Ho opened his mouth and was about to arrest her with a businesslike attitude. Yushu didn't look angry at all. She pretended to be surprised and asked, "What did you say? My mother is an escaped slave?" "Arrester Ho, you've got the wrong person. Although my mother is of humble birth, I've long sought Imperial Consort Nyang's permission to return my mother to a good citizen. Although this matter is not known to all, there is no lack of people who know about it. Who is it that is so unreasonable and falsely accusing my mother?" Constable Ho said coldly, "That's right. Your mother's contract of sale proves that she is a servant of Assistant Minister Yin's residence. Otherwise, why would we dare to come to your residence to arrest her?" "Contract of slavery?" Yushu shook her head and laughed. "Then there must be a mistake. My mother was indeed a servant of the Yin family a few years ago, but the madam of that residence was virtuous and virtuous. She returned the contract to my mother and acted as a matchmaker for my late father, allowing both of them to return home. It had already been more than 10 years. How could there still be a contract of slavery? I said, you've got the wrong person. Please leave. Arrestor Ho saw that she was going to play dumb to the end. He looked at Yushu and saw that she was just a little girl around 10 years old. She was rumored to be amazing and even thought that she was born with 3 heads and 6 arms. Because he was ordered to come here, he was very confident. He thought that if he completed this task well, he might be able to show his face in front of the assistant minister. Immediately he pulled a long face, raised his eyebrows and glared. He threatened, "There are witnesses and material evidence. Darren, are you going to defy the law? Law? Do you have the final say in the law?" Yushu sneered and straightened her upper body. She looked at him and said, "Get the hell out of here before I get angry." Just a moment ago he had a friendly expression on his face, but now his expression had changed faster than flipping the pages of a book. That contemptuous gaze landed on him, as if he was looking at a dog instead of a human. Ho flew into a rage out of humiliation. He slammed the table and stood up. "We are under orders to capture the fugitive. Hand him over now or don't blame us for being impolite." Yushu picked up her teacup. Expressionless, he said, "Send the guest off." Zhou, who stood behind Yushu and raised his hand towards the door. 2 servants walked in and were about to drag a few bailiffs out. Arrestor Ho's sleeve was tugged by someone. He subconsciously waved his hand to break free, but he ended up slapping the servant's face. The servant took a step back and fell on his butt. He was stunned for a moment, but before he could react, he heard a dang sound. He turned around and saw that Yushu had slammed the teacup on the table and was looking at him expressionlessly, not waiting for him to speak. Behind him, the steward with thick eyebrows and round eyes walked out in large strides, bringing with him a surging aura. In the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of him and kicked out, hitting him squarely in the knee. Plop. The arrestor fell from his chair. Kneeling on the ground, Zhang Xian didn't wait for him to fly into a rage before stomping on his back. The force of the stomp was so great that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. The expressions of the bailiffs who had followed him all changed. They reached out and placed their hands on their swords, ready to step forward to rescue him. Lu Hong and Su Qing saw this. First he stood in front of Yushu. "Men!" Zhou Hu bellowed. In an instant, more than 10 figures rushed in from outside the corridor. With Ah Ping and Ah Xiang around, they easily captured all the bailiffs present. Arrestor Ho, who was lying on the ground, was shocked when he saw this scene. He felt a sharp pain in his back. He couldn't speak. Then a pair of lotus green boots appeared in his line of sight. The tips of the boots were embroidered with golden ripples, slowly enlarging. They stepped on his face. "Who do you think you are to behave so atrociously in front of me? I'll teach you a lesson today. Remember to tuck your tail between your legs in the future." With that, she walked away. Arrestor Ho was dragged out by his collar, together with the other bailiffs, to a large lotus pond in the front courtyard. It wasn't until someone pressed his head into the bone-chilling mud that he felt suffocated. He had no strength to struggle. Only then did he understand what Yushu meant when she said, "Don't wait for me to get angry." Unfortunately, it was too late for regrets. Yushu wasn't cruel enough to kill a few of her henchmen. She just gave them a light punishment so that they wouldn't dare to act violently again. However, when Yin Zhorong and his wife heard it, they had a different understanding. What? She beat away all the bailiffs who came to arrest her? Madame Yin Deng cried in surprise. Yin Zhorong had just returned from the yamen. Madame Yin Deng kept asking about the progress of the matter, so he had to talk to her with a sullen face. In fact, when he knew what Yushu did, he was as surprised as Madame Yin Deng. He knew that Yushu wouldn't let her mother be taken away, but he didn't expect that she would dare to instruct her servants to beat up the bailiffs. She didn't look like a little girl at all. Yesterday, the bailiffs from the yamen in the north of the capital were also beaten up. It seems that the women in her family were hurt. That's probably why she became so angry today, Yin Zhorong guessed. She's really lawless. Madame Yin Deng said worriedly, "What should we do now? If she doesn't hand over Xiao Zui, how can we try the case?" Yushu's guess was right. Yin Zhorong wanted to drag concubine Cui to the court to testify against her. Only then would he be able to prove that concubine Cui was guilty of absconding and capture Yushu's mother. At that time, it wouldn't be a problem to deal with Yushu. What's the hurry? It's a good thing that she's so impulsive. Yin Zhorong sneered and said, "Let's send someone tomorrow. I want to see how many bailiffs she can beat away." She's not afraid of making a scene and we're not afraid of that either. Master, what do you think? Let me know what to do. Madame Yin Deng was afraid that she couldn't control Yushu this time, and she couldn't avenge her youngest son, who was ruined for the rest of his life. Humph, does she think she'll be fine after beating people away? As an official of the imperial court, she doesn't know how to behave. When she's done, I'll find Censor Wang to report her. If she's sensible, she'll come to beg for mercy. If she wants to fight with force, I'll make her lose her official position. Let's see how she can be arrogant then. Yin Zhorong had a perfect plan, so he wasn't afraid that Yushu would turn the sky upside down. Madame Yin Deng was a little worried. Master, didn't you say that Yu Lianfang has a title given by the emperor? If we go directly to her and annoy the emperor, wouldn't we be shooting ourselves in the foot? That was before. Yin Zhorong's eyes lit up. He leaned close to her and said in a low voice, "Do you know what the Shui family did?" He whispered 2 words in her ear. What? Madame Yin Deng gasped in shock and stepped back. Are you serious? Whether it's true or not, she won't have a good end if she's involved in such a crime. I'm telling you, you have to keep your mouth shut. The emperor gave that girl a title and publicized it to make her a wise ruler. But think about it. Yu Lianfang has a close relationship with the eldest son of the Shui family. Once the Shui family is convicted, what will happen to her? I'll just ruin her reputation in advance. The emperor won't blame me. Yin Zhorong had been an official for many years. He had some experience and thought that he had figured out the emperor's intention, so he didn't have to worry about the consequences. Madame Yin Deng was relieved. Thinking of Yushu's future, she was happy, but she said harshly, "Originally, I planned to force her to marry into our family and serve Yuanbua. Now I can't. When she comes to beg for mercy, I'll make her kneel in front of Yuanbua and kowtow to admit her mistake. Then I'll feed her a bowl of broth to relieve the hatred in my heart." A woman's heart was the most vicious. Madame Yin Deng showed it clearly at this time. Yin Zhorong didn't even frown when he heard this. Instead, he said faintly, "That's what she deserves." He had never thought that Yin Yuanbua would end up like this. Wasn't he getting what he deserved? Yushu didn't stay at the residence the next day after she beat away the people from the Ministry of Revenue. Instead, she told Zhou Hu to do what she did yesterday if someone came to find trouble. As long as the other party made the first move, she would beat them up and then throw them into a cold pool to wake them up. Bailiffs came to the Yu residence to arrest people for 2 days in a row. The matter was blown up and couldn't be hidden. Yushu sat in the Kunling bureau for the whole morning. She heard a lot of gossip, but no one dared to say anything in front of her. When Xiao and asked for leave today, and Yushu had drafted the next month's book. She only needed Jing Chen to look at it and stamp his seal, but she didn't see him these 2 days. Seeing that the time limit was almost up and she couldn't delay it any longer, Yushu decided to go to the princess's residence to find him. At dusk, Yushu's sedan stopped outside the princess's residence. The guards at the gate all knew her, so she entered the gate without any obstruction. As soon as she sat down in the living room, a steward eunuch came to serve her. "Official Yu, please sit for a moment and drink some tea. Our young master is resting, please allow this servant to send someone to inform him." Yushu's heart skipped a beat. This eunuch looked familiar, so she smiled. "It's not dark yet, why are you sleeping? Are you upside down? You must be joking. The young master was summoned to the palace yesterday and only came back this afternoon. He didn't sleep well, so he's tired." Yushu nodded. She could hear a lot of information from his words. After waiting for the time it took to drink a cup of tea, she saw Jing Chen come out. She could see his tired expression at a glance, so she asked, "What happened in the palace?" Jing Chen dismissed the servants and sat beside Yushu. In a low voice he told her, "His Majesty fainted yesterday. I guarded the Hall of Tranquil Peace for the entire night. His Majesty only woke up this morning." Yushu's heart trembled and she quickly whispered, "Is the Emperor okay?" Jing Chen shook his head. "It's not a big problem for the time being, but his body is a little weak." Yushu didn't know whether she should be disappointed or relieved. She continued to ask, "Why did he faint all of a sudden?" Jing Chen naturally told her everything he knew. "I only heard that the day before the emperor sent an edict for Dong Jingwang to lead troops to attack Wei country. Yesterday, after court, Prime Minister Shui and a few elders of the court entered the palace to see the emperor. I don't know what they reported, but the emperor fainted from anger. The empress heard the news and rushed over. She immediately attacked Prime Minister Shui and imprisoned them in the side hall. Then she secretly summoned the great Tidian, the Count of Zhongyong, and the Xiang Wang to enter the palace to accompany the emperor. Yu Shu frowned. She thought the Shui family had already been sucked into the rebellion and couldn't even look after themselves. What was Shui Lingnan doing, giving someone else something to use against them? Wasn't it messy enough? Noble consort Shui was pregnant and became a thorn in the eyes of everyone in the Hogong. If Empress Rui had a chance to hit her while she was down, she wouldn't easily let it go. Then why did you also go in? It was the great Tidian who informed me. Jing Qin warned Yu Shu, the news hasn't leaked out yet. Don't mention it to anyone else. From what I can see, the Emperor doesn't seem to want to make it public. As soon as he woke up, he ordered for Prime Minister Shui and the elders to be released and allowed to leave the palace to return home. I know. Yu Shu secretly broke out in cold sweat for the Shui family. She then thought about the missing Shui Rui. Right, what did you find me for? Jing Qin asked her. Yu Shu gave him the Great Earth booklet. After you read it, if there is nothing wrong, stamp it so I can report to the palace. Jing Qin received it and called someone in. He ordered them to go to his study to get the stamp. Without flipping through it, he stamped his great seal on it. After Yu Shu finished this matter, she politely declined Jing Chen's invitation to stay for a meal. She left the Princess Fu and returned home. She didn't want to see the people from Wangji Tower when she entered the house. Miss, the chambermaid Xiao Dai welcomed her with red eyes, begging. A group of troublemakers came to the restaurant. Chapter 723. Ever since the news of Shui Rui's disappearance came back to Wangji Tower, Lin Fu had been on tenterhooks. He had warned everyone in the restaurant to be on guard against villains. Even if they were careful, they still couldn't stop it. That evening the restaurant was full again, and there were no seats left downstairs. The customers who came later either left in disappointment, or generously booked a private room on the second floor and paid an extra 10 taels of silver to unlock the door. Apart from noon, business was good at this time of the day. Lin Fu sat behind the counter and used a small scale to calculate and keep accounts. His abacus was so fast that it was not enough for both hands. Downstairs there was another table of regular customers who had settled the bill. Lin Fu smiled and greeted them. Second grandpa's son, young Master Li, there will be aged wine coming out in 2 days. Don't forget to come and have a taste. Ah, sure. Someone died. All of a sudden the crowd was in an uproar. Lin Fu's heart skipped a beat. He grabbed the waiter who was passing by with the dishes and asked the waiter to guard the counter. He called Gui Lu, who was running the restaurant downstairs, and the two of them ran up the stairs. The scream just now came from the second floor. It was a mess downstairs, but it was even worse upstairs. The corridor was filled with people. They were all customers who heard the scream and came out. Gui Qi opened the way in front while Lin Fu lifted his robe and walked behind him. Soon they arrived at the scene of the accident. The private rooms of Wangji Tower were arranged according to the names Wind, Flower, Snow, Moon. This room was a flower room, and it was furnished with all sorts of exquisite and novel things. It was usually used to entertain young masters and young masters. Lin Fu stood at the door and poked his head in. He saw that the 8 immortal glazed screen blocking the door was pushed to the ground. A chair was smashed on it and one of the glass windows was cracked. Thousands of taels of silver worth were destroyed just like that. He didn't have time to feel the pain. He heard a noise inside. Where's the manager? Where the hell is the manager? In the inner room, there were 6 or 7 young people gathered around a round white marble table. Some of them were sitting while others were standing. The tablecloth had been lifted. The red and green dishes were scattered all over the floor, still steaming. Lin Fu didn't recognize the person who shouted, but when he saw someone sitting next to him, his eyelids suddenly twitched. He squeezed out a smile and walked in with small steps. Oh my lord, I didn't know you were here. This little one greets Lord 11th. Do you know who was the leader of this room? It was the devil incarnate who was expelled from Enling City by the Emperor's decree. 11th Prince Louis. Louis folded his arms and sneered. He did not make a sound. The person beside him shouted again, "Don't try to get close to our master. Are you the manager of this restaurant? Good timing. I was just about to settle the score with you. My brother just drank a mouthful of your wine, and then he foamed at the mouth and fell to the ground dead. Tell me what to do." After being yelled at, Lin Fu took 2 more steps forward and walked around the table. Only then did he see a person lying on the ground, dressed in bright and beautiful clothes. His mouth was full of white foam and his eyes were rolled back. He was motionless and looked like he had died. Lin Fu was startled and thought that something was wrong. He turned around and asked the waiter who was in charge of serving the dishes. He pointed at the person on the ground and asked, "What happened?" The waiter was obviously frightened. He shook his head with a pale face. "I don't know. He was fine when you came." Although there were many hidden dragons and crouching tigers in Wangji Tower, when there were too many people, there would always be corners that could not be taken care of. Lu Yi entered the door and sat in the private room upstairs drinking wine. Lin Fu actually knew nothing about this. This was obviously a trap set by the other party. Lin Fu could see through this kind of trick in one glance. But since it was done, it would not be easy to deal with it. Most importantly, Lu Yi was present, so he could not use force. "What are you talking about? There are so many eyes watching. He died in your place. If you don't give us an explanation today, we will smash this tower." Lin Fu wiped the sweat off his forehead and ignored the noisy lackey. He bowed to Lu Yi and said, "Master Lu Yi, our forgotten machine tower's tea, wine, and dishes are all clean and fresh. We have so many customers all day long. If it was poisoned, something bad would have happened long ago. Could it be that there is some misunderstanding? Why don't I send someone to report to the officials and have them investigate this matter?" Lin Fu retreated in order to advance. At this time there were too many people in the tower. He could not be careless and let people think that Wangji Tower had a guilty conscience which would ruin their reputation. On the contrary, Lu Yi had already been expelled from the capital by the emperor. No one would dare to interfere if he entered the city quietly. But if he were to cause trouble in such a big way, they would have to think twice. Report to the officials? Lu Yi finally opened his mouth. He looked at Lin Fu and said sarcastically, "Who doesn't know that the owner of your restaurant is the eldest son of the Shui family? He is the Shaoqing of the Supreme Court and specializes in investigating cases. I think you want to report to the officials so that you can get away with your crime. Let me tell you, there is no way." Lin Fu took a deep breath and argued with him with a bitter face, "You are joking again. My young master has not been back for a few days." "Yo!" Lu Yi interrupted him with a loud voice and a fierce look on his face. "So, no one is in charge here? Serves you right that my little brother was poisoned to death by you, and I have no place to seek justice. Do you believe that I won't smash this broken tower of yours right now?" Lin Fu was roared at by him and thought that this was bad. This Master Lu Yi was here to cause trouble because the eldest son was not around. He tasted bitterness in his mouth. If it was any other day, he wouldn't need to be afraid even if another Lu Yi appeared. However, today was different from the past. The Shui clan had changed and Shui Rui wasn't around. How could he have the confidence to fight a prince seriously? "Master Lu Yi, please calm down. My young master is not here, but there is another person in charge here. Why don't you sit here and wait and I will invite her over?" "There is another person in charge? Speaking of which, you also know her. She is my eldest son's sworn sister, Miss Lianfang." Lin Fu had no choice but to use the name of Yu Shu. Hearing this, Lu Yi's eyes flashed. He cracked his neck and his joints made a cracking sound. "Okay, invite her over." The people who came with him all looked like they were watching a good show. Lin Fu secretly sighed, excused himself and left. He first apologized to the customers in the corridor, saying that they could skip the meal. After all, a life had been lost, so he couldn't do business today. He asked everyone to go back. Some people listened to him and left, but some refused to leave. They said a few words to Lin Fu and returned to the private room, waiting for someone to come. Then they continued to watch the show. Lin Fu did not want to chase these guests out, so he could only shake his head and go downstairs to clear the place. When Yu Shu saw the messenger, she didn't even take a breath as she entered the room. She turned around and went straight to Wangji Tower. The carriage passed by the front door and saw that the door was unlocked. The sky was dark and 2 of the 4 red lanterns on the door were extinguished. There were still many onlookers standing at the entrance and they did not want to leave. Yu Shu ordered the driver Lu Zhong to go through the back door. Lu Hong and Su Qing rode their horses and followed closely behind. Yu Shu entered the restaurant from the backyard. All the customers downstairs had left, and the table was filled with cold leftovers. It was quite desolate. The waiter Gui Qi was squatting at the staircase. When he saw her rushing in, he rushed over. "Where is everyone?" Yu Shu asked. "They are upstairs and Manager Lin is accompanying them." Yu Shu nodded and Gui Qi led the way in front. As they spoke, they went up to the 2nd floor. The customers in the rooms on both sides of the corridor heard footsteps and poked their heads out. There were many who knew her, but they did not have the time to greet her. "Manager, the lady is here." Outside the flower room, the door was open. When Yu Shu stood at the door, Everyone in the room turned to look at her, especially Lu Yi. He stared at Yushu's tall and slender figure from head to toe. The corners of his mouth curled up as he said, "It's been a long time." Yushu smiled insincerely and cupped her hands at him. She walked in and first looked at the corpse on the floor. It has been less than an hour since the incident. The corpse was still fresh, but the white foam at the corner of its mouth had dried up. It was sticky and stuck to his face. It was indescribably disgusting. Yushu did not recognize the deceased, so she did not waste time talking to Lu Yi. She asked him directly, "Who is the unlucky one?" She could not be blamed for not respecting the deceased. To be on the same side as Lu Yi, he must not be a good person. Lu Yi saw that Yushu did not even look at him and was unhappy. He grumbled, "It's my little brother. He drank your wine and was poisoned to death. Since you are the owner, you should give me an explanation." Yushu looked at Lin Fu and the latter hurriedly whispered, "This room ordered 2 jugs of 50-year-old flower carvings. They were taken out from the cellar on the same day. They were tested with silver needles before serving. There is no poison." Yushu looked at the overturned table and the broken wine jugs on the floor. The wine had long been spilled and there was no way to test for poison. She moved her feet and was about to approach the corpse when she heard Lu Yi's men shouting, "What are you doing? Are you trying to destroy the corpse?" Yushu stopped and retracted her hand. She thoughtfully stared at the corpse for a few moments before raising her head to speak to Lu Yi. "This person definitely didn't die because he ate the food and wine of our forgotten machine building. However, this incident happened here. How about this, Lord 11th? Give us a plan and we will discuss how to handle it." Yushu lowered her stance, but Lu Yi did not budge an inch. "Don't talk nonsense with me. This person was poisoned to death after eating your food." Yushu pulled a long face. "If you are not willing to settle this privately, then report it to the authorities. If you want to investigate, then investigate thoroughly. The crime of poisoning someone to death is not something our restaurant can bear." Lu Yi sneered, "So what if you want to report to the authorities? Do you think I'm afraid? However, let me remind you, don't forget who I am. I don't even know who poisoned me. Fortunately, it was someone else who died. If I had taken that mouthful of wine and something happened to me, all of your heads added together wouldn't be enough to chop off." Yushu's face changed slightly. She could hear the threat in his words. This scheme of framing someone was not very clever. However, with Lu Yi involved and someone dead, it was different. If this prince was not careful, it could be said that they were plotting to kill a prince. The Xue family was at the heart of the struggle. The owner of this Wangji restaurant was Xue Rui. If they were to bear the suspicion of plotting to kill a prince, wouldn't it be adding fuel to the fire? She weighed the pros and cons and had no choice but to make a compromise. She looked at Lu Yi and asked, "Then what should we do?" You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.